There we go. I'm muted. We are back to Mixed Media Live, and we're streaming through a new service. We're streaming through Rumble Studio. Shout out to Rumble for providing a free service that allows me to stream to all three of our platforms. And I am happy to issue restream if at all possible, because it's very annoying. So this is a much easier process if it works out. But if the audio is different, if the video is different, if something's a bit off or something, just let me know if there are any problems, and I can try to tinker and see if something needs to be changed on our end. But this seems to be working, which is kind of exciting. So except for I just realized that Restream was powering our on-screen chat. So I need to find a substitute. It's probably going to work the same way, which is actually that Restream chat, if you didn't know, is actually a web page that's being keyed like on the fly, so that only the text shows. So it's not that Restream gave me any like nice tool or something to put on the screen. I made it happen. So I'll probably end up doing the same solution for the Rumble Studio thing. So it'll probably work the same exact way. But all that aside, welcome to the Mixed Media Podcast. Before we talk about our show here, we should reintroduce ourselves. So my name is Irving Nestor. I'm a filmmaker and media entrepreneur, and I own a company called Ariella based out of Mount Carmel, Pennsylvania. Oh, I muted you, Ben. My bad. Go ahead.
Hi, I'm Ben Costello. I'm a flute player and media composer.
And I'm Nathan Nestor. I'm a 3D modeler and video game developer.
Sweet. I just realized that there's a Rumble Studio logo on the stream. I didn't know that was going to be a thing on our YouTube stream. But I guess that's the price you pay for free, I guess, is the idea there. I will decide whether I hate that enough or not. Or we'll see. Okay, so yeah, thank you guys for showing up, those of you who are sifting in. Today, at the top of the show, we're going to be talking more about certain things that we've talked about privately off podcast, about how we're changing the show. And then we'll go into a normal format this time, but hopefully very soon, the format of the show will be changing to something even better. So we'll be today talking about news and stuff at the top. Then I will be talking about the Gina Carano lawsuit, mostly just reading the lawsuit alongside, the audience. And then we'll do arguing with Reddit, and then we'll finish up with Nathan talking about, what is it again? Shooters. Yes. So that's the order of business for today, and our show generally is a media art show, and we talk about all these things in all kinds of ways that you could possibly think of: philosophy, news, pop culture, reviews, technical things, advice, like practically anything you could possibly think of, especially as it relates to film, music, and gaming. Like, the catalog is vast. It's hundreds and hundreds of topics. So literally, go check out our channel and you'll find something of value. I almost guarantee it, just based off of the breadth of topics that we've discussed. So that's our show. So should we explain how the show is changing? Actually, maybe we should give it a few moments because we wanted some of our supporters to trickle in. So maybe we'll start with how our weeks were. So how are you guys' weeks?
Not
But
not bad. Yeah, I spent a lot of time doing some notation and engraving work. Something I'd like to do a lot more. But I really enjoy engraving, although it can be a time-consuming process. Basically, if you're not familiar with what that means, it's basically creating written music, as in like actually creating the visual, the score that people read from, not actually creating like the musical content, but
Really engraving it?
No, it's with modern notation software.
Okay.
No, it's not literally like the old hand engraving process.
I didn't know. I was like, are you gonna be making one of those like panels that you see in like missiles and stuff like this? Like,
No, no. You can call it engraving. Sometimes it's called copying. But you have the active, notating music. And it's a fun thing. I've mostly done it for myself, but it's the kind of thing I've done a lot of stuff for people for free over the years, and it would be nice someday if I could, it is actually a skill, right? It is an in-demand skill, especially in like the film industry or like other, media music world, where you need stuff notated well and quickly, especially as it comes to like creating parts, like the whole aspect of binding things too, which I'm not, and like I'm not in that level yet, but like in terms of notating things and like spacing and making it look pleasant to the musician. They don't have to guess what's happening. They have easy to read, great like locations of page turns. I like that kind of stuff.
yeah, that sounds cool. Yeah. For me, I did some drone photography and videography today because the town was absolutely gorgeous because of the snow. I don't know if it snowed that much around y'all, but here it was like pretty intense, and wasn't expecting that because the forecast wasn't terribly intense.
Yeah, we got like maybe like 3/4 of an inch, but then it melted almost as soon as the snow stopped falling.
Ah, okay. Gotcha. Yeah, we probably got like 5 inches of snow, like a decent amount of snow.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
And it coated everything beautifully. I looked out my window. I was like, gotta get the drone, gotta run out, because today was last time it snowed like this around here. I wanted to do the same thing. I was just way too busy. I couldn't manage it. So this time I was like, I'm still too busy, but I'm gonna force it. So I'm gonna go out and I'm gonna take some drone photography, and that was super fun. And some of that stuff almost certainly one day will become postcard material, as I've asked people around town if they'd like postcards, and they said yes. So I'm happy to oblige. So that was super fun. And besides that, no, just been chugging. Nothing else too interesting. How about you, Nathan?
I'm currently struggling.
You just started work.
Oh yeah, I started work yesterday. I went on a Catholic retreat this weekend. But currently, I decided to rewire a bunch of stuff in my setup, and it's tough. I added a lot more wires than I realized that was going to happen with this thing. So, yeah, my laptop works, which I'm using right now. My desktop is currently out of commission. I'm trying to get that working because that's what I use to like look things up mid-show. So, that's what's been going on.
Cool. Yeah. I'm just looking at our stream because I'm very particular, and I'm like, is it looking as good as usual? I don't know. Maybe there's a slight quality loss, at which point that also is kind of I'm gonna have to think about that.
Yeah. I think as I noted in the YouTube chat, I don't think it's syncing with Discord. At least in terms of like the chat.
Oh, yeah, that should be working as well. Dang. Oh, with Discord. Oh, see, that's another restream. Yes, there's work to be done. So yeah, the chat's not going to be unified for this episode. How did I even do that? I don't even remember how I think there's the Restream made a bot or something, and I just have a Restream bot on the server that like auto does all the magic, which almost certainly is not a thing with Rumble Studio. So we may have to switch back. We'll see, because the logo already is like really irritating me. So
yeah, does that is it taking up space that we used to have? I can't even tell but I think
that's where the
probably
chat
compressing us.
Oh.
Oh, okay.
Oh wait, do you mean the chat or like the logo space or like the whole
Yeah,
thing
is the
is?
logo like making that area larger so that the rest of it is compressed
Oh no, I don't think
horizontally?
so.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's just where the chat was. Um, yeah, it's. We'll see. We'll see. I'm very particular, and I really don't like people slapping logos on my stuff. So we'll see. But that aside, let's see. If you guys are there, if we've got especially our local supporters, if you're there, please drop. I know Kai said he couldn't make it already because, right? Didn't he say that? I think he said that. If you are there, please ping us real quick so that we know, because I don't know if we should begin explaining now or I don't know. What do you guys think?
We can keep tabs on both YouTube chat and on the Discord.
Yeah. Okay. Well then, is there any news?
I know there is something I wanted to say, and then when I went to like write it down, like I can't remember what it was. So there's something I know that I wanted to say that I'm missing. But in addition to that, Seiji Ozawa died a week ago. Very important Japanese-born conductor. He conducted all over the place, but most famously, he conducted the Boston Symphony Orchestra for a very long time. I think for 29 years. It's a really prominent kind of face of conducting, kind of in the especially in the the wake of Leonard Bernstein, like after the death of Leonard Bernstein, he's kind of like the next face of conducting, at least in America. A very prominent, energetic conductor. So yes, he passed away a week ago today. So I think he.
Not sure.
Yeah, I can hear
Okay.
you. So I guess he was what is that? Like 88, 89, 88, I think. Yeah.
Gotcha. Cool. In the media space, the film media space, I haven't noticed anything other than what I'm going to be talking about today, which I actually went ahead and skimmed through the lawsuit. I didn't actually. This actually be kind of a first impressions because I very quickly just was like, okay, what are the main points here? Just shh. So we'll go through it together later on the show. Other than that, yeah, I can't think of anything other than Happy Mardi Gras. And then Valentine's Day falls on Ash Wednesday, which is a little awkward. So, yeah, so I guess Happy Valentine's Day and Ash Wednesday on the same day.
I mean,
yeah.
I imagine, at least in terms of like the Catholic feast, the feast is supplanted by Ash Wednesday.
Yeah, I would imagine. Can you imagine like eating tons of chocolates on a penitential day? It's kind of bizarre. But yeah, that's all I really got. I don't think I noticed anything else of terrible significance other than what I'll be talking about later on the show.
In terms of gaming stuff, I mean, I've been gone, the weekend and then I had to work, so I don't know what goes on anymore. But I don't know if we talked about this on the podcast or maybe in the Discord. Because I feel like I remember bringing it up, but or not necessarily bringing it up, but talking about it. Disney invested $1.5 billion in Epic.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know anything about that. If they made a statement on why or whatever. I think they have, so I don't really know why or what their plans are.
Wait, I have a question for you about it because I was very confused. I tried to dig into a little deeper, and then I was super confused. I thought Epic was a public company, Epic Games.
Is it not?
I couldn't find they have a ticker assigned to them, which is Epic, but I could not find their actual listing? Like I was so confused. I was like, is this on some weird exchange? Like, Epic is an American company, right?
Yep.
Okay, so I don't know what exchange it's on. I don't know why I can't find its value.
Yeah, I was looking for that too because I was trying to figure out how much is 1.5 billion.
Yeah, exactly. That was my question.
I was trying to figure out what percent is like gobbled. I looked it up. Yeah, I didn't find anything either. Huh? I just thought it just wasn't easy to like. I don't know. I was looking in the wrong place or something. Yeah, I'm not really seeing any sign of. It says smartasset.com says on their page called "How to Invest in Epic Games" says Epic Games does not have a stock on the stock exchange. So
it's not public.
I guess it's private. Yeah.
Oh, interesting. So then we don't know its valuation, which means we don't know what percent Disney has gobbled up. Although Disney's, I'm just explaining this for people who don't understand, like investing stocks, whatever. So just because you're on a public exchange doesn't mean you're not on a private exchange. There are literal private exchanges, like the NYSE, just like literally, like no opaque. You know what I mean? And there are just like private deals. So like, you know, where you buy stock like company to company, person to company or whatever. So I don't know what Epic is on. It might be on a private exchange or this might be private dealings, like, you know, between people. That being said, when I looked into this very briefly, that 1.5 billion was during a round of funding, which I'm again kind of confused about because I don't know what form this funding round is like. How is this like an ad hoc funding round, or is this like a stock what you call a IPO? Is this an IPO happening on a private exchange? Because I don't see it on the public exchange. It must be that, you know. So that being said, Disney is one of many first takers, it seems, to this public, or not public in a sense, public-private offering. You know, this private offering to probably many companies. They're the first of, like, it looked like about 8 to 10 investors made big enough investments to have to report it. And Disney was by far the biggest when I was looking at the list, by like about 4 times maybe, or something like that, which is probably why I grabbed the headlines. And I think in total they raised $10 billion. So Epic must be worth at least $10 billion, but obviously it's going to be worth, according to that valuation, way more than $10 billion.
It says on Wikipedia.
What does it say?
As of April 2022, the company has a $32 billion equity valuation.
There you go.
So 1.5 billion out of 32 billion is 4.7%.
Dang, look at you with that head math. Dang.
Well, no, I didn't do it in my head. I looked that up.
I thought you had that in your head. I was going to say that's insane. 4.7%. Okay. So yeah, 1.5 billion is big, but like for a company that's like 30 billion, like I mean that's a huge valuation for a gaming company for sure. So anyway, continue with the story. I just derailed that entirely.
Oh no, that's really, I don't really know what's going on. As I said before, I was working and then I was at a retreat, so I'm kind of you know, I'm just getting back into it. So
yeah. Unfortunately, like so $1.5 billion is still a lot. Like, you know, they're probably one of the larger minority shareholders. And as I've been saying on the podcast since the beginning, for those of you who have not been around, and if you have not been around, please check out our awesome backlog and consider subscribing. But I've been saying this for a long time, that Disney is not making enough money off of their film and TV directly, like in terms of like sales. I mean, they still do stuff in the theaters, which is the main moneymaker, but they keep moving away and away and away from traditional publishing services in the name of streaming, right? So they joined the streaming wars. Them joining the streaming wars means that they slash their profit margins deeply. Like, people really don't understand that streaming is not profitable at all. So they're taking the L to try to move everything to streaming. so that they can destroy competition, right? So what they're trying to do is offer a better product that takes away money from their medium-sized competitors. Medium-sized, for if you're Disney size, it are things like Netflix, Peacock, things like this. They're trying to destroy them so that they can take all the customers, so they own the whole media space, right? It's just cornering the market. That game, though, can't last forever, right? So like, if you're Disney, you're happy if you win that war. But once you win the war, you're still taking an L, right? So you have one or two options. You leave that space once you destroyed the competition, or you raise prices, right? Like, that's the only way. So, you go from a $15 a month Disney Plus subscription or whatever it is, and all of a sudden it'll be $45, right? And that'll actually cause it to be profitable. Or you move on to something else like gaming, or you put your fingers into something like gaming first, right? Just to test out what your success could be. Then when you're in the gaming, when you're at that crossroads where you have to make a decision, you could say, okay, we're just going to screw movies. There'll be no more movies anymore, even though we all own all the IPs and everything like this. Theaters die, streaming even dies, or whatever, or is like a secondhand thought. But now gaming is the new shiny toy, right? And then they'll just repeat the process in gaming. And that's all debt-driven. So there you go. That's almost certainly the economic dynamics going on with Disney and gaming. So, yeah. Let's see here. So I think we've got a few more people. Let's see. Is 99 Crime in the chat? I wonder.
If you want to wait another minute, I found the thing I wanted to mention.
Okay, cool.
News-wise. So I'm not sure whether I mentioned this back in late November or not. This is kind of crazy. It's kind of, around the time we were getting towards Christmas. So I don't remember. But apparently back in late November, a new mountain capital decided or announced that they were going to be purchasing BMI, the performing rights organization, one of the two biggest performing rights organizations in the United States, subject to shareholder and regulatory approvals, which was just completed 5 days ago. So now this investment company owns BMI. The price, I believe, is not official, but the reporting is around 1.7 billion to acquire it. So that's certainly significant if you are a composer. What does that do to the landscape, given that that was a bunch of basically a capital firm, right? A bunch of people with a lot of money who aren't involved in art own one of the largest performing rights organizations for composers out there. So interesting to see what the result of that is over time.
The consolidation continues. Yeah.
Apparently, also they are, I guess, Capital G, which is Google's independent growth fund, is acquiring a passive minority stake in BMI as well. So I guess Google has some part of this as well.
Oh boy. Yeah, consolidation indeed. In fact, I see Kai's in the chat, so we'll start talking about the changes of the podcast in the moment. Shout out to Kai. But before we do that, I just want to say, today there was a pretty bad, because I talk about economics. For those of you who are not familiar with the show, I'll occasionally mention it when there's particularly big stuff. I almost wish I had an economic segment, because there's stuff to always say. But right now, the CPI report that came in today came in very hot, basically, compared to expectations. So meaning that the inflation reading on the CPI report was higher than whatever the bankers collectively decided it should be, right? It's literally a survey, and they say, okay, this is what we think inflation is based off of our metrics and calculations, and that came in hot. Now, the importance of that is that it came in so hot and very hot on specific categories. So like one of the weird categories that was extremely hot was that beverages is up like 30% year over year. Like, and that just happened like or randomly just like, it just randomly reared its ugly head, I guess, at the beginning of this year. But more importantly, as we talk about consolidation, the stock market doesn't react to bad news currently in the way that I think most people would expect. But it's because they don't have like the granularity of the particular numbers. So I won't bore you guys with this at all. It has to do with the dynamics of what we're even talking about, right? So the SPY, right, the index that tracks the S&P 500, that index is like very top 10 company heavy, or like top 15 or whatever it is, right? Naturally, because the market cap of those top 15 companies is gigantic. So their values, their overall value, their overall amount, this is the Googles, the Apples, the Microsofts, the Nvidias, the so on and so forth. These companies are so massive that they make up like a ridiculous percentage of the overall stock market, right? So the SPY is going to be tracking everything in the S&P 500, but it's going to mostly reflect the value, right? Or what's going to move the market most rapidly is the value of those big companies. There's a different index called IWM, I believe. Trying to open my Robinhood, see if I can see the ticker. But this gives you the Russell 2000, right? So the Russell 2000 is going to be top 2,000 companies, right? So so it's a much broader S&P 500, right? Being 500 companies, Russell 2000 being 2,000 companies, right? So now the portfolio is going to be a lot less top heavy. It's IWM. There we go. So so what we've been seeing, which is very fascinating lately, is a decoupling of IWM from SPY, right? So SPY. Those usually they kind of follow each other, right? Because if the market's generally going up, it usually means that people have a generally good outlook and they're willing to put money into the stock market at all, which is considered risky in general, right? Instead, they've decoupled, and there are articles written about this if you want to look it up. Like it's hit the mainstream. It's that interesting. But IWM and SPY have decoupled in the sense that IWM is not gaining in value at nearly the pace. In fact, it's losing value even when the SPY gains value. What does that mean? It means consolidation to blue chip stocks, right? So it means that like people are taking money out of riskier assets, like, I don't know, some random small business that IPO'd or, recently. Rumble, right, would be in... I actually don't know which index. I'm not sure if Rumble's tracked on. I doubt it. No, they're not. They're not. I don't know why I even question that. So a company like Rumble is going to be in the Russell 2000, right? And maybe that's even wrong. Okay, you can look that up yourself. But just for example, Rumble's a riskier asset. It's more recently IPO'd. It's a very speculative bet. It runs on debt like almost everything else, even just like the top 10 companies. But those companies have been running on debt for like, I don't know, 50 years. Like no one cares that they run on debt, right? But like these riskier assets that aren't as bankable and whatever, if there's a banking crisis, which there actively is one right now, then okay, there's a liquidity problem for those small companies. If there's economic slowdown, there's a liquidity problem for those companies. If there's inflation that's affecting the profit margins, that is going to hurt those small companies. So people are basically taking the money that was in companies like Rumble and yeeting it into companies like Google. So the SPY looks like it's staying somewhat steady, but the IWM is crashing. And this is fascinating. So, that's to say that is a leading indicator for general crisis, because if we have too much of that, then, general confidence in the entire economy, because we Not yet. It can run only on 15 companies, at least. Those companies are also providing essential services, economically essential, right? As they die, then the whole thing will die eventually. It's just kind of a canary in the coal mine. So yeah, that's just interesting because consolidation is happening everywhere in the market as liquidity dries up. Nerd talk for a moment, but there you go. Okay, away from that nerd talk, we should talk about our show. So for those of you who are just dropping in, I will talk about, because I see the numbers rising on the Rumble side, and welcome people. I will be talking about the Carano lawsuit. I will be literally reading the complaint in, 15 minutes or so, 10 to 15 minutes, after we talk about the changes that are happening with the podcast, because we're making big changes, and I don't know if one of you want to explain what we've come up with.
Gotta pull up the notes. There's a lot of stuff. Let's see. All right, where do I start? So you had many ideas. One of them was to, maybe one of the bigger ones is, rather than having 3 segments, it'd only be 2 segments plus this introductory segment, I suppose. So I suppose we usually have 4 segments, but it'd be 1 intro, 1 topic/review, and then an arguing with Reddit segment. So that make the podcast a little bit shorter. And the person who doesn't go that podcast episode would instead have a separate segment on a different day that'd be a lot more chill and relaxing. It could be kind of whatever. It could be I don't know. If it was me, for example, playing and talking about a video game as I play or something like that, right? We wouldn't all necessarily have to be there for that, but we may be. Unclear, I suppose. And did we say that would be exclusively on Discord, or I don't remember?
Yeah, although now that I think about it, I don't see why, if you want to stream, if it's possible to stream in multi-platform, because one of the things that we've talked about is we want to share media, and it's hard to share media on YouTube. In particular, because there's the content recognition system, and they have all these contracts with these publishing companies, and we don't want to be doing anything unethical. So don't think that's what we're doing. We just want to do fair use, like the law allows us to do fair use citations. So for streams like that, we're probably going to be on Discord only, unless Discord becomes a problem, and then we'll figure something else out in that case.
All right, so yeah, you can imagine things like maybe talks about music or movies where you can actually reference the specific segments of music and the movies. So hey, at this moment, hey, I think this about the music, instead of trying to describe it in words.
Yes.
You can just
hopefully my talking about music is less boring in that way. I might just you can listen to English horn and learn something from it.
Yeah. Right. And so we're thinking that would be on Friday at 6:45 Eastern time. Right. So that pretty much covers that part. So
basically, each episode, just to clarify, each episode will be really a 1-topic episode with our normal news segment at the beginning, like we're kind of doing now, and then at the end we'll do finish with arguing with Reddit. But that'll help us to just have 1 topic, that the episode is mostly about, 90% about, and just have an intro and ending on top of that. So I think it's a little bit more coherent.
All right. And so one thing that we're trying to fix is the fact that a lot of episodes or segments end up being kind of like monologues by one person. So we're thinking that if we have 1 topic and we all know what it'll be in advance, we'll be able to prepare a little bit more and be able to become informed, because that's kind of the reason why it ends up being a monologue, right? Is maybe one of us talking about some particularly niche topic that the other 2 don't really know about, and so it's hard to ask questions when your base knowledge is at 0, So that's what we're trying to solve there. And so also with that, we might start prioritizing some thematic episodes. So for example, one I suggested recently was be an Attack on Titan series. So you have 3 episodes in a row about it could actually be the Attack on Titan movie, but I was thinking about the show. I don't know if you'd like the movie though. I think it looks like a Avatar: The Last Airbender movie. It's the same sort of vibe where it's like this should not be a movie. Like it cannot be live action. It does not make any. It looks really crazy suddenly.
Isn't the new Avatar: The Last Airbender show coming out? Is that on Netflix?
I don't know.
Is it live action?
Netflix?
It is live action. Yeah.
No.
It has the original writer, not the original writers, original creators involved.
I don't know if that helps. if they casted a 6-year-old for Aang again, then I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, he's young. He's young. I don't know. I don't know how old he is, but
that's one of the. It's a great. I love it. I love Avatar, but it is always kind of like it's always kind of funny because he's 12. He acts like he's a little bit younger than 12, but like he's also, by the end we're getting like some romance. I'm like, you're like 12 years old. You're really young. Yeah.
We need to bring back if you watch like old 50s TV shows, you'll see that they always use like the oldest people possible to play like high schoolers. It's like some like random like
that. It's like these guys are a little bit
like high schoolers are like look like they're 30-year-olds, and honestly, like your brain gets past it pretty quickly. I'm not gonna lie, as long as it's like young-ish like adult, it's kind of works. So maybe for Last Airbender, they need to do something like that where Aang is like 15 instead. The
actor's 14, so it's close.
Okay, maybe they didn't make a mistake. I don't know.
But this poster, oh man, I gotta send this. It's not really. Not giving me good vibes. I'll put it in media, I guess. It's kind of low resolution, unfortunately. Oh no, it's actually it's kind of small.
It is Netflix, right?
Yes, it's Netflix. Only on Netflix, yeah.
Oh wow, huh?
Yeah.
Oh, speaking of that? So I know Netflix did that move to like you can't share your password. You can't access it from like your non like. From a location outside of like whatever you deem your like central location. I thought I heard that Disney Plus is also moving towards doing that.
Maybe I'm not sure.
I mean, it makes sense. It forces more people to subscribe that way.
Yeah.
Now
that now that Netflix took the heat for that, it's just normal, so they can just do it without with backlash.
Yep. Yeah. Okay. So aside. What else about the show did we not mention?
Yeah. So let's see. Thematic episodes potentially. We thought about having sort of once in, I think Irving said like maybe twice a year physical meetups. Doing those physical meetups wouldn't necessarily take on like. Obviously, okay. First off, it's obviously not like some like. It's not gonna be like a podcast changing event, really. You know what I'm saying? It's only gonna be twice a year or something like that, right? But I think the idea would be that wasn't like a normal podcast episode because, well, it might be more interesting to do some like like IRL stuff. Some going to concert or something, I don't know, video, and then we do something like that. So there's that as well. There is some and sometimes oftentimes the podcast is canceled because either one or all of us sometimes can't make it. So we're thinking that maybe we used to do these 60-second videos and we couldn't make a podcast, so continuing to do that would be good. So I think I did like a 60-second review. I think we all did 60-second reviews actually. So reviews or otherwise, I suppose, all those could work. And I'd also like to make our Discord a little bit more, what's the word for it? I guess active is the word? I don't know. Sort of bluntly, I suppose.
That sounds right, yeah.
Yeah. So make sure more of our work more often. We, of course, have Guild Wisdom and Story Chains, which are two good ideas for channels, but they're unused. So that is, so utilizing that would be good, and potentially removing like the mid-journey and ideas and feedback channels that are unused. And I mean, ideas and feedback news go in general anyways, and or relevant text channels like if it's gaming related or something like that. And Midjourney, I mean, Midjourney is no longer free, so it's no longer also no longer a novel. So yeah, that can go, I suppose. So yeah, is that it?
I think so. I mean, the overall vibe, right, is that we want the show to be much more compact and focused. We want to interact with you guys a lot more. So just having Discord parties once a week where we're rotating subjects. We're blessed to have people who are interested in all three of our subject matters. So we could do movie watch-alongs, in terms of what I'm thinking, movie watch-alongs. We could watch Last Vampire on Earth together, because it's free on YouTube, and that would be very fun. And just laugh along together to the film.
I need to rewatch that. Yeah,
exactly. One of the greatest. I think it's actually my favorite. So bad it's a good movie, by far. So Last Vampire on Earth. Doing stuff like that. Maybe doing short film watches together or stuff like this, or Sporkle, little fun quiz stuff where we're kind of answering the questions together, and you guys can laugh at my lack of remembrance of any celebrity's name, and stuff like this. And then I'm sure my co-hosts too have good ideas in terms of what they want to do too. So yeah, I think that should be good. And then just having it's just it's all about interaction. I think it's just making the community a much more active space where we're not just talking at you for 3 hours, which we all desire. And this is also for our sanity as well, because we were getting kind of bored with the old format. So we like this. So yeah, but let us know for sure if there's something you don't like about anything we just said. This is part of a gradual process too, as we've talked about, because social media is a bit of a chicken and egg problem where it's hard to get your foot off the ground. It's like trying to lift yourself up by your bootstraps, right? It's kind of that problem where, what comes first? Does the audience come first, or the money to be able to self-perpetuate it, right? And we're blessed to have 4 awesome supporters. Shout out to y'all, which makes any of this possible. But it also means that if we're not gonna, it means that we need to figure ourselves out first, create an awesome show, and then come back out at the sort of chicken and egg problem later. So this is a gradual process as well. You're going to see some of the assets for the video, sort of this setup, change slowly over time. Things be corrected, branding be actually coherent and cohesive.
Speaking of which, so I guess Irving, your comments get put up on the comment box.
Oh yeah, so I noticed that. So apparently, if I put it on the Discord chat, it does appear. I don't know how.
Oh, okay.
But
I will note that the Rumble Studio logo is kind of awkwardly over.
Wait, what's happening?
The Rumble Studio logo is kind of awkwardly over the text. Not that anybody's missing much, because it's covering up part of the text link to the image. Yeah, but it is over top of the text.
Yes,
somewhat awkwardly. So I just figured I'd point that out.
Yes, yeah, no, I will be fixing stuff like that slowly over time for sure. With that, shall we continue with the show?
Sure, but it's funny that we still are. It reminds me that our time still doesn't say 7:30. It's just written over as 7:30. It's been like that for
I think months. I did that. Yeah.
Yes. This is.
We changed the time too, right? To
yes, that's important. Yeah, I forget. The time is changing from 7:30 to 8 on Tuesdays. Yeah, so don't come here at 7:30. Come here at 8. All right. So with that, if you have any comments on that kind of stuff, definitely let us know. Hit us up in the Discord. The link is in the description. There are people there, so join the party. It'll be fun. I think that's it for the housekeeping stuff. Shall we begin?
Yeah.
Sweet. And here we go.
Mixed Media Movies.
And welcome back to Mixed Media. If you've been patient with us for the beginning of our show today, thank you very much. And if you're tuning in later, if this episode actually gets spliced up at some point in the future, this is a segment of 4 that we do, a new segment and 3 other segments. And so check out those other segments. They're going to be awesome. Nathan's going to be talking about shooters, and we're going to do Arguing with Reddit with Ben, as usual. So definitely check those things out. Shout out to 99 Crime, not Rob Sharma, sorry, my bad. 99 Crime post, Alex Egbert, and that's it, right? Did I miss anything? Oh, Kai, yes, obviously, K Kairos. Shout out to y'all for helping us out, and we really appreciate that very, very, very much. Okay, today I'll be talking about the Gina Carano lawsuit. I actually know very little about almost anything about it. I'm literally going to, this is kind of an exercise in primary sourcing, and hopefully that'll be inspiring. But what I do know about it is that way back when, I only remember like vaguely some of the stuff going on, back when this was originally issued. And I think the dates are in the lawsuit. So as we go through it, we'll be refreshed as to what's going on. But way back when, Gina Carano posted a tweet that got a lot of people angry, and then Disney ends up firing her from the Mandalorian and canceling her future contracts, right? So that's the general gist of it. Then she, on February 6th, decides that she's going to file a complaint again against Disney. So she had done this way back during her original sort of tiff with Disney. I don't know what happened to that lawsuit. If I were to guess, probably got dismissed, which is not infrequent for for any case. Actually, no, civil cases specifically. It's very infrequent for criminal cases, probably for bad reasons, but that's the story for another day. Yeah, so I don't know what happened to that formal lawsuit. Today, she filed another complaint. So all I have to work with today is her complaint, and we'll talk about what that means in just a very few minutes. The reason this came back up, I found out after digging in just a little bit. Again, not terribly much background, so don't yell at me if I just don't know certain things that are like particular outside the legal context. But I do know the reason why this lawsuit came about again at all is because Elon, who now owns Twitter X or whatever, X Twitter, he now owns the platform. And a while back, and I never heard this when it happened, he put out apparently like a year ago or something like this, 6 months to a year ago, a while ago, he put out a offer to anybody who had lost their jobs due to something they said on what was Twitter back then, right? Offering representation if the case was viable, right? So like he just put a general call out saying, I will hire the lawyers for you to challenge whatever employment action was taken against you if my lawyers think this is actually a workable lawsuit, right? And that was the sort of offer, basically. And this is a good promotional material you can imagine on Elon's side if you're trying to make Twitter profitable, which I guess we've talked about ad nauseum on the show. None of these things are actually profitable. Twitter is not profitable. It was only profitable for like a quarter before Elon took it over. So it's not an easy business making these platforms profitable because they cost too much to maintain. Versus what they actually get in like their like one undiversified income stream, which is ads. so that's the story of every social media platform. So Elon, who almost certainly regrets his decision, or regretted, today he probably does not, but when he just bought Twitter, there's a lot of reasons to say this from a legal perspective, that he probably regretted his choice once he started looking at the internals and was like, dang, I don't know how to run a social media company. They don't operate like anything manufacturing at all. And that's true because they operate off of debt. So anyway, he's coming up with these ideas to sort of prop up the company, right? So one of the ideas he came up with is this kind of program, right, which kind of brings a sort of free speech brand back to Twitter, right? A brand in which it had before, and for a whole plethora of reasons were tainted over time, right? So he was kind of trying to resurrect Jack, I can't remember his last name,
Dorsey?
Jack Dorsey. He was trying to resurrect Jack Dorsey's original sort of branding with Twitter. So anyway, that's the backdrop. So Gina Carano ends up, I think, I can't remember what she said, if she sent a letter to like a specific thing, whatever. She solicits the program that Elon promoted, and they go through a review process. It actually takes a few months, is my understanding, for all the relevant facts to be reviewed, which probably means that the initial facts were pretty decent, and then the lawyers probably went deeper, and they were like, okay, are the rest of the facts going to line up, and where's the law at on this topic? Presumably because Twitter doesn't want to bleed itself dry, of lawyer fees. And so they did the requisite investigation. They come to the conclusion that, yes, there's actually a viable suit from their perspective to actually bring suit against Disney. So where are we at in the process? Basically, Gina Carano has now representation through the payment of Elon Musk, right? So, or rather Twitter or X, whatever. And her representation is now paid for by X. Okay, fantastic. Let me pull up now a page that will help us navigate some of this. That is the picture of The Last Airbender. I don't want to pull that up. Let's see. This is the link here. Okay.
Wait, who is Gina Carano again? Like.
Oh, I probably should have said that. I just kind of assumed. Yeah, Gina Carano was an actress in The Mandalorian. I have not watched a single episode of The Mandalorian, so I have no idea what her role is in that show whatsoever.
So I think she was actually a professional wrestler first, or getting into acting, I believe. And so in The Mandalorian, she played what's her name? I just had it. Cara Dune is the name of her character, and she's like a former like rebel special forces person. She's from Alderaan, so she saw the destruction of Alderaan. Everyone in her family died. The Death Star blew up Alderaan, and she's basically like the kind of female muscle in the first 2 seasons of The Mandalorian.
Right. Yeah. Yes, that is the background. Okay, let me see if I can pull this up in a way that looks pleasing, which is always difficult. It's going to be in the bottom right corner here. Let's see. Do this real quick. Actually looks pretty decent. It's probably not readable, but I will pull up the lawsuit in a moment. I just wanted to show you this page because I have an agenda with this episode that is not actually specifically about the human interest of this story. And my agenda is that I want to challenge everyone watching this in post, live, whatever. I want to challenge you because this will, if you do this to any capacity, change your life. I want to challenge you instead of, actually, this could be a Lent challenge if you're doing Lent. A suggestion. It's a bit interesting potentially, but I will challenge you to not read a single article without referencing the primary sources that the reference in the article, right? So like, you're scrolling through social media, you see like a link and a headline or whatever, and you read the article and it's like 3 paragraphs, 4 paragraphs, whatever. Or you read one of those op-eds that are like 10 billion pages long. Instead of doing that, the challenge, it is difficult, but worthwhile. The challenge is, instead of reading the author's words, just go look at the title so you understand what the topic being talked about is, and just go to the linked primary sources that are there. So don't even read it. Like, just literally click links, just click links and go to the primary sources for that particular article. And make sure they're actually primary sources. So if the link leads you to another article, find the primary source in that article that was actually being linked to. Don't be satisfied with secondary sources. I mean, really primary source primary source content. So this will be things like that, like we're about to go through. This will be, complaints, lawsuits. This will be pictures, videos, all kinds of primary source stuff that would be admissible in court without being hearsay, right? So that's how court works, actually, is that, everything has to be primary source. And if something is secondary, then it is a witness. It is a person. And the person has to be brought in, right? So that's how a courtroom works. You have to be able to interrogate something that's not primary, right? That's the idea. Anyway, if you do this, and then you go through all the primary sources, you formulate your own opinion on the headline based off the primary sources, and come back to the article, your life will change. Your life will change. I challenge you. It's hard. It will take up time, but just deny yourself reading the article unless you're going to put time into actually doing that. And I promise you it will help. So that's my agenda with this episode, is to show you how to read. I guess functionally that's what's going on here. Let's see. So, and I promise you, you do not need to be an expert to read even lawsuits, because they're designed specifically to appeal to common people. I mean, the complaint is going to have a lot of legalese if it pertains to law, right? So the law piece might be a little bit more complicated if they're trying to get a judge to do something under a specific statute or something like this. So that might be harder to understand. But they're already setting up their arguments to be heard in front of a jury. So they're going to be selecting the article, because they can't do that later. The judge has to approve certain pieces of evidence and certain lines of argument prior to the case actually happening. So they're going to set up their public-facing case, at least to some extent, from the open. Does that make sense? So you can read it. So don't let anyone tell you can't read it, as long as you're dedicated to the getting past the jargon. And there's not really as much jargon as you'll see as you might think. Whatever jargon there is, it's not that hard to look up. And again, don't just read some random law dictionary. Just go look up a law dictionary and look up, I don't know, voir dire or something. I don't know, whatever the legal term is that's confusing, just look it up. And that would be how you do this. But this website is cool. It's called Court Listener. If you look up the PDFs of these documents that are submitted in court, often you'll find that that it's actually hard to find them. So you'll find a bunch of articles. So if I searched up Carano versus Disney, right, what's likely to come up is a bunch of articles, not the actual, case files themselves. And in those articles, they're really bad at linking the primary sources, which is something you should realize as you're doing the exercise I mentioned up front. Is wow, most articles actually don't have good basis, in primary sources for their facts, right? So in any case, you can go to a website like this called Court Listener and look up the case. Court Listener is nice because it gives you free access to most of the stuff that is freely available, because these are public records. A lot of people will try to charge you to look at public records, which is kind of insane. Literally free for people to view. You could probably even go to the state's website and go find it there if you're persistent enough, for free. So don't do that. Go to Court Listener instead. And most things on here are free. Some of them link to a proprietary source, presumably because they don't have I don't know, the requisite bot or something that scrapes, the right page or something like this. I have no idea. But this will give you a timeline of this particular case, which is very short. This is short for a timeline for a case, because this case has only been filed on the 6th. So literally a week ago. So really, there's nothing here. And every little incremental action that was taken in court is going to be on this page. So we can see that it was filed on February 6th, 2024. And we know that because it says complaint receipt. There's the receipt for their complaint. We can see that they paid $405 to submit their complaint, a sum that is probably insurmountable. No, I'm just kidding. And there on the right, you can see the document PDF little button there. You can click that. And
can you link this in the chat?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I'll put it in the chat.
It's actually kind of hard to see the text on stream.
Yeah, that's fine. I didn't put it up to be able to read this particular page.
Okay.
But I'll put the link because it's useful stuff. Let me find where I put it here. Copy link. I'll post it here. And I'll also post it on the chats, which is kind of annoying. There we go. I will make this work one way or the other. Okay, cool. There we go. What was I going to say? Okay, so I'll make this bigger too. Actually, my camera just froze. I think my battery died. That's annoying.
That hasn't actually happened in a long time. It used to happen very frequently.
That's very irritating. That hasn't happened in a very long time. You're right. Let's see. I'll fix it in a moment. But yeah, so you can use the site like Court Listener to see this beautiful little timeline here, and you can click that sort of download PDF button and open the page. So I already have a link to the page, so I'm going to open that in a moment. But before I do that, could you guys stall so I can fix my camera?
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I certainly have heard quite a bit about this because I keep, very, very much in touch with Star Wars news. Yeah.
Actually, I haven't heard anything about it. I don't know anything about this at all.
Oh, you know? Okay. So, do you know what the original issue is? I'm sure we're going to get to that. Irving will get to that eventually. But do you know anything about that?
So, presumably, from what I understand, it was a tweet that was said. I don't know what it was. I feel like they might have mentioned actually on the. No, I don't know if we mentioned it ever, but if it was mentioned, I don't remember.
I think we briefly mentioned it on the last podcast. I think so. Essentially, what she kind of been coming under fire back in, I think, 2020, and she'd been kind of coming under fire for being critical of the vaccines. So then
I think I did know this.
So then the real tweet that got her in trouble, which we'll probably get to, but she kind of makes a comparison between people who are telling her that she's saying harmful things, comparing them and saying basically that's kind of how the Nazis operated, right?
I knew that was coming.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. I said the word that I'm not supposed to say on YouTube, but yeah. Yeah, there you go.
What's that? The internet meme law? I forget what it's called, where all conversations end in that essentially.
Oh, I know what you're talking about. Yeah, I don't remember.
Yeah.
There's a name for that.
Yes. So that's basically saying comparing how a certain group of Germanic peoples in the 1930s were able to seize power by silencing opposition or something like that. So that's essentially the gist of the tweet that landed her in trouble with Disney.
Right. Okay. Yes, that is good background. And thank you for stalling. Let me pull up the case link here. My camera's working, right? Yeah, it is. Okay, good. So this is the complaint, and what a complaint is is it is a just the initial filings of the plaintiff complaining, right, that there's some tort, there's some means basically by which they can seek remedy from the state for something a private actor did, right, which is otherwise known as a civil suit, right. Let me fix this so this doesn't look as horrible as it does right now. Do that. Actually, I should probably zoom in so we can actually read it. Let's do this instead. Beautiful. I think that's decent. Let's see here. Pan over. Do that. Beautiful. We are ready. Okay. So this is a lawsuit. No, this is the complaint, rather, which starts the lawsuit. And what a lot of people don't realize is that a lot of civil complaints get dismissed immediately. Now, the reason this happens is usually because of a defect of law, right? So usually that just means that like you didn't allege something that's good enough to go to court, simply because even if we assumed all the facts in the case were true, so the judge basically goes, let me just assume all the things you said in the complaint are true, right? Does it still violate a tort, right? Like, is there still some statute that says, like, you know, you can get remedy from this, right? And if the answer is no, then it gets dismissed, which is pretty logical, right? So it's like you said, oh, I'm suing the person for assault, but then in your case, all you describe is the person, like, I don't know, like looking at you funny, right? Like the requisite like components of assault aren't actually alleged, right? So then it gets dismissed. That's one reason the dismissal. There are more. But otherwise, it goes to court after this, and then there's something called a reply. So the opposing party, after they are served, which they have been in this case, if you looked at the only reason it could get advanced is if they've been served, right? So Disney is aware of the lawsuit, as you can imagine, and they have acknowledged the existence of the lawsuit, which means they now have to comply with the court process, and the court has jurisdiction now over the entire process. If you look at that court listener site, a few interesting things. There was a judge assigned like the day after the complaint was submitted. The judge assigned then, like a few days ago, recused him or herself, I can't remember, for some reason. There's probably a document on that will tell you why, right? So you can really know a lot of things about a case by just looking at primary sources. You might be interested. Why did that judge decide to recuse themselves? Like, let me look at that document. It's like, oh, I'm like a gigantic shareholder in Disney, you know, like, you know, I'm going to recuse myself, or like, oh, I know the plaintiff's cousin or something. I don't know, something, you know, things like this cause recusal. Now you may ask yourself, what happens if a judge decides that they don't want to recuse themselves? Nothing. There's no remedy. There's no remedy at all for if a judge. So let's say the judge was a 10% stakeholder in Disney. You know, they were a whale, and they own billions of dollars of Disney stock. And they sat on the bench and they were like, you know what? Let's say they were in good intention. Then they were like, I can still judge this case fairly, even though I have billions of dollars of interest in this case. And then the plaintiff submitted a motion saying, please recuse yourself, right? Which is a motion they can submit saying, like, okay, you own billions of Disney stock. Please recuse yourself. The judge can go, nah, I'm not going to. Because the jurisdiction of every case is always the court in which it is assigned. Always. So the judge is literally the king of the court. You could literally think of it that way, like the king of the room, like of that room, and the proceedings that happen within it. I say this because most people don't know about some of the interesting things about our legal system, and these things need to be talked about more and thought about more when we think about justice in general, right? So it does not matter. The only remedy you have is appeals, and the case will keep going regardless of your appeal of your original motion, so long as the case is in effect. So you will have to lose the case to that judge, potentially at least, right? And then go to court on the appellate side, if they'll even take it. So they may not even take the case, because every appellate court has the decision whether, it depends on the state at the lowest level. Sometimes they mandate certain types of appeals must be heard or something like this. But in general, appeals can be denied by appeals courts. Anyway, let that in your brain. So anyway, we're going to skip the names of the people involved and their emails. We don't need that. And I'm not going to spend too much time on the nitty gritty because we just actually want to know about what's going on here and the interesting parts. But you can see there it says complaint and jury trial demanded, meaning they don't want the judge to be the decider of this case, which is a choice in many states. So they're asking for a jury. And if you ever have this choice, hashtag not legal advice, most of the time you want a jury, most of the time, unless you're doing something that a judge's mindset is specifically good for. Okay, let's see here. So the first thing that we learn is that Gina Carano is not only suing Disney, right? So it says defendants, the Walt Disney Company, Lucasfilm Ltd., and Huckleberry Industries, which I vaguely have heard of in some context, but I can't remember what the heck it actually is.
Is that the? I think it might be the company that, like, the agency that represented her.
Okay, that makes sense.
I think they also dropped her.
Right. Okay. Gotcha. And like I said, I have briefly gone over this case, skimmed through it. And so I know I've read some of it, and so I'll skip around, I'll skip stuff because we're not going to read the whole thing right now. But generally, I have not read this in detail. So introduction is going to be the lawyer narrating the narrative. Every lawyer narrates a narrative. If your lawyer is not doing this for you, you have a horrible lawyer. You should fire them immediately. Hashtag not legal advice. You should fire them. A lawyer should be maximally, unless you tell them otherwise, maximally skewing the case in your direction. Maximally. That is the lawyer's job. That's literally their duty. That's what they swear to when they become an officer of the court, right? Is they swear to defend you maximally, right? So when we read a complaint like this, we don't have the reply. This is one side of the story. So don't take me reading this as me saying this is true now, because this is a complaint, right? This is just me going through the complaint to see what they're alleging. They may not even be telling the truth about certain things. In the reply, the same things apply. The state, or not the state in this case, the defendant may not be telling the truth about some things in the reply. That's why it's an adversarial process. And it starts cornily. So it says, a short time ago in a galaxy not so far away. And you might be going, that's horrible. Why would you start like that? I'm telling you, this is common. Corny stuff like this is extremely common because judges like dad jokes. They're weird. They like it. They like reading it. They read boring stuff all day. If you make them chuckle, you make them happy. I would not do this. I just couldn't bring myself to it. Defendants made it clear that only one orthodoxy, so defendants being the three people that we mentioned before, that only one orthodoxy in thought, speech, or action was acceptable in their empire, and that those who dared to question or failed to fully comply would not be tolerated. And so it was with Carano. So again, we're continuing with like epic language.
Lots of Star Wars. These are all Star Wars references.
Right. After 2 highly acclaimed seasons of The Mandalorian as Rebel Ranger Cara Dune, Carano was terminated from her role as swiftly as her character's peaceful home planet of Alderaan had been destroyed by the Death Star in the earlier Star Wars films.
Why?
Now, they might know something. They may know that in this jurisdiction, they're much more likely to come across a judge who's a Star Wars fan. Actually, if you think about ages, right? Who's likely to be on that seat? A Star Wars fan, right? So again, think for the mind of a lawyer. You're going to take every advantage you possibly can, right? Again, I don't think I would take this approach though. It's good. I couldn't do it. And all this because she dared voice her own opinions on social media platforms and elsewhere, and stood up to the online bully mob who demanded her compliance with their extreme progressive ideology. Defendants' wrath over their employees' social media posts also differed depending on sex. So what does this tell you, right? So this tells you that one of the major components, because it's mentioned so early on, is they're not just going to complain about people disagreeing with them, right? They're gonna set up this narrative. Again, this is all narrative. They're gonna start setting up this narrative that there's a sexist component to the entire case, right? And I know this because I read through it as well, but here they already mention it in some capacity. Even though the force is female, and which is a quote from Kathleen Kennedy, one of the most memeable moments of Lucasfilm's history. Defendants chose to target a woman while looking the other way when it came to men. While Carano was fired, defendants took no action against male actors who took equally or more vigorous and controversial positions on social media. But the rule of law still reigns over the defendant's empire, and Carano has returned to demand that they will be held accountable for their bullying, discriminatory, and retaliatory actions that inflicted not only substantial emotional harm, but millions of dollars in lost income. So they must, in every civil case, it cannot proceed if damages are not possible to be collected, right? So sorry, go ahead, Ben.
I'm just stunned by how many Star Wars references they're throwing in there.
Yeah.
Do you think that there's a chance that the lawyer was not, statistically speaking, right?
Mm-hmm.
The lawyer probably wasn't that well versed in Star Wars to be that on the fly, right? So you think he just researched a lot about, he just watched a bunch of Star Wars to figure it out?
No, this is a team of lawyers.
Did you just found someone who's okay, Star Wars, write this thing?
I mean, the odds that one of them is a Star Wars fan or their collective knowledge could be good enough is probably high enough. They could probably ask Gina herself, about certain things. I don't know. It's probably not that hard to put it together.
I suppose so.
Okay, so they allege some damages. They say it's millions of dollars. Okay, so we're gonna skip this jurisdiction and venue part. It just basically says that we're submitting this in the right venue, meaning the right location, right? If you think about it, you could submit this case in California or Florida or wherever, right? But some of those courts are going to have jurisdiction. Some of them are going to not have jurisdiction. You might ask yourself, what happens if you're the defendant in this case and the plaintiff filed it in the completely wrong jurisdiction and the judge says, no, actually, it's the right jurisdiction? What happens? Nothing. Because again, the judge is the king of the court. So if the incident has nothing to do with California, but the complaint is filed in California, and the judge accepts that it's filed in California, and you're in California, so you get served, right? And so now you have to go to court. You're assigned a court date. You have no freedom if the judge is completely wrong on jurisdiction at all, because now you're part of the court's proceedings. The court is king on these proceedings. So you could be in the completely wrong jurisdiction. If the judge does not agree that you're in the wrong jurisdiction, you have to wait until the case is over, pending appeal, and that's not necessarily a good situation given how much money it costs to fight lawsuits. Okay, so nature of the case. This is a civil action arising from defendant's wrongful termination of Carano's employment in retaliation for Carano's lawful exercise of her right to speak and express her views. So now they're saying it's a lawful exercise. So now we're saying we know they're gonna make a legal argument at some point, not just a factual argument. Specifically, defendants under the regime of former Disney CEO Bob Chapek fired Carano because of her posts, which we're going to refer to as the posts from here on out. That's why that's there. On various social media platforms, including X, formerly known as Twitter. Carano composed and published the posts while she was off duty and away from the workplace. And that might be a relevant fact for other legal reasons down the line. In her posts, Carano expressed her personal political views, opinions, and beliefs. In retaliation for Carano's exercise of her speech rights, defendants terminated Carano's employment and took other retaliatory actions to limit and deny her future employment opportunities, including but not limited to making maliciously false statements about Carano with the intention of damaging her reputation and thus her ability to find and retain work. So laying the groundwork. You see how readable this is? Anyone could read this and understand what is being said. Because defendants took action that harmed her in violation of the laws of the state, Carano is entitled to the relief sought herein. Then we go through a description of the parties and how they relate to the case, and what their relevant, relationships to the case are. So we're going to skip over that. Factual allegations. So these are facts now that they're going to talk about. Carano's acting career takes off. And I'm not going to go through this part because it's basically them saying that she had a lot of promise. She started off, I think the most significant thing here is that she was listed in 2008. So this is actually relevant for time purposes. So well before any of this stuff came up, right? She's listed as a top 10 influential woman of 2008. The only reason, and again, it's because I read some of the rest of the stuff I can say this, the only reason they're doing this is, one, to make their client look good, right? Narrative building. But two, they're doing this to set up damages as well. So they want to set up this idea that the career had a trajectory. And if they win the case, they want to not just get money that she's owed for the current stuff, but they want to show that the trajectory is killed so that they can increase the damages that they're asking for. This happened famously in the Johnny Depp case, which he actually got that sort of trajectory damages calculation, which you almost never can get a jury to do. Let's see here. So that's that stuff. Not terribly interesting for our purposes. There's a picture evidence is being submitted of Carano on some promotional material. That's not terribly interesting. Let's see here. So let's skip over to 24 here. Because of Carano's contributions to the success of season 1 of The Mandalorian, her agents sought an increase in her pay, but defendants refused, instead offering her a one-time bonus of $5,000 and again a minimum of $25,000 per episode in which she was to appear in season 2. Now it's kind of like, I don't know, it's a little odd. Like, I would expect it to be more, but maybe I don't know the rates. I actually don't know her role, so I don't know if this makes sense or not.
She was a very significant secondary character.
Okay.
Pretty much in every episode.
Okay, so maybe this number makes sense.
Maybe, I guess in season 2 she wasn't in every episode, but a very significant character, yes. Okay. This might be reasonable. I have no idea. Yeah, I wonder if it seems maybe a little bit low, just because, I mean, this is, the very beginning of Disney Plus, and like still early days of streaming, and Disney Plus only show. Maybe that's how Disney calculates actor pay for that sort of thing. I don't know.
Yeah, no, that could make sense of it as well. Carano was again instrumental in the success of season 2 of The Mandalorian. In fact, Carano was responsible for over half of the talent engagement on social media related to season 2 by early November 2020. So this is all, the reason they're saying this again is both for damages, but also they're saying it because they want to show that it wasn't reasonable for Disney to fire her for other reasons, right? Because you could imagine, if you didn't make these arguments, that the other side might say something like, well, I mean, we outwardly said it was these reasons, but internally the reasons were actually these things. We just didn't like her performance, or we just didn't like whatever. But these are facts that they're putting forth to show that it would be unreasonable to assume that it was those other things versus what they said out loud, right? That would be the reason. Indeed, on November 21st, 2020, Lynn Hale of Lucasfilm emailed Lynn, I don't know how to say that. Emailed Carano to congratulate her on the success of the first episode of the season, when Carano's character made an appearance, noting, quote, "Just wanted you to know that people loved the episode today, as we knew they would. Congrats." That's probably a very specific episode. I don't know. That's important for some reason. On October/November 2020, Jon Favreau, creator and executive producer of The Mandalorian, informed Carano that her, quote, "life is about to change," end quote, because Disney had approved a new Star Wars spin-off entitled Rangers of the New Republic that would feature Carano's Cara Dune as one of the lead characters, which I did not know at all. And
they definitely set this up very deliberately in the very end of the last episode of season 2. Was it the last episode of season 2? I think I think it's the last episode of season 2. They very, very clearly set this up. Yes.
Okay, I had no idea. I didn't know there was another show involved until I read the suit.
Right. And this has caused ripple effects for the Disney Plus Star Wars shows because they obviously can't do it. But there are some plot lines that obviously needed to be in that show that had to kind of be forced into the season 3 of The Mandalorian in order for them to set up the eventual movie that's going to like cap all of this stuff off. And yes, so there's that whole aspect of it as well.
Makes complete sense. So apparently Kathleen Kennedy confirmed this new show, and then it says Carano would have been a series regular on Rangers of the New Republic. The standard agreement for a series regular would have been comparable to what other Disney Plus actors received for other Star Wars spin-offs, a contract for approximately 6 years at the base compensation beginning at $150K to $250K per episode, which that's pretty reasonable. That's more like it. But it's interesting how much of a disparity there is between like secondary and primary characters. But could make sense. Each season of a series typically has between 8 to 10 episodes. So again, they're just putting out the math. 4 damages, right? Very clearly. Then we get to the meat of the facts here. So all of this came to an end in February 2021 when defendants announced through social media that Carano had been terminated because of her role as Cara Dune and would not be hired for any other projects with defendants, all because she expressed her political opinions on social media. In announcing Carano's termination, Lucasfilm made the following public statement. So this is going to be probably like one of the most talked about statements if it goes to trial, right? Quote, Gina Carano is not currently employed by Lucasfilm and there are no plans for her to be in the future. Nevertheless, her social media posts denigrate people based off of their cultural and religious identities are abhorrent and unacceptable, end quote. So this is going to be, there's going to be a lot of things. Like, when you see statements like this, you should really hold on to them because this is going to get almost the crux of the whole thing, almost in of itself, because there are specific components of this that are being alleged. So there's denigrating people based off of their cultural and religious identities is very particular, right? So that would have to be the plaintiff would have to show that there might be a lot of factual disputes over that particular statement, basically. Defendant's statement characterizing Carano's social media posts as, quote, denigrating people based on their cultural and religious identities was false. There you go. I just pointed out the exact phrase that they would pull out and focus on. It was also made with knowledge of its falsity. Now, this sounds like a defamation case because it's like you knowingly said something false, right? Although off the bat, the opinion is going to be an opinion, in my opinion. like the statement's going to be an opinion almost by nature, which is not, you can't sue for defamation for that. Unless it's egregious, like really egregious. Like, it's very clear that the person is just simply slandering, right? Maybe it is. I don't know. Okay, so then it talks about like her being defamed, yada yada stuff. I think is just like irrelevant to the law here. Bob Chapek has been quoted as saying Carano was fired, quote, because she didn't align with the company values. In doing so, Chapek said these company values are, quote, values that are universal, values of respect, values of decency, values of integrity, values of inclusion, end quote. And then they say this statement was false as well. I'm trying to get through this faster here. Defendants also discriminated against Carano by treating her differently from her male co-stars. So this is the sexist sort of component looped back in here. Who also made public political statements on social media. Her male co-stars were not disciplined, let alone terminated in a way to destroy their careers, even though some would find their statements abhorrent. So likely they've combed through all the statements of all her co-stars and found that only the males, right? Likely. I'm not saying this is actually what I'm saying. If I were to imagine the lawyers thinking, if they're doing a good job, they probably wouldn't say this if they hadn't combed through all the Twitter feeds and everything of all the other co-stars and found that males had made these kinds of statements and that there were no females that were being let off, right? Or else this would completely immediately nullify their argument, right? If the opponent just picks one thing to point out. Let's see here. And then it says defendants harassed Carano. So they're not saying the public. It says defendants harassed Carano, which is interesting, for a political statement subjected her to vilification, which sounds like not them, right? Read in between the lines, people. Find the subtext, right? Subjected her to vilification means that could very easily just mean that the firing caused people to attack her, which has nothing to do with the defendants, right? The first statement was a much stronger statement, which said that they harassed her and allowed other employees to harass her because of her political views. Yet defendants did nothing when her male co-stars made statements that many people would find equally, if not more, objectionable. Okay, so there's more like harassment stuff. And then this is important. They refused to hire her for the show they mentioned, Rangers of the New Republic, which was planned. And it says all because of her political beliefs. Okay, let's keep going. So this is the subtitle for the next section. Carano exercises her right to express her thoughts and issues of the day. Excuse me, only to be harassed because she did not espouse a progressive orthodoxy. X, formerly known as Twitter, is a social networking platform. Okay, this is background for boomer judges. Almost certainly. I'm not kidding. That's almost certainly why they have to explain this stuff. People, what is X? So it says that she uses X regularly. She uses it for opinions. She used Instagram, which is, they say, is a similar movement platform. Okay, so 45 says, while the incivility directed towards her started much earlier over the summer 2020, oh no, that we don't need to read that. Okay, 46. When she declined, declined what? Oh, telling her to act in a certain way, right? So when she declined, Carano was called all sorts of names, including that she was a racist for not publicly adopting the Black Lives Matter moniker, and a transphobic B word for not including pronouns in her profile's biography section. Now, it doesn't say that Disney did this, right? It says the public did this. So again, read critically. That is likely irrelevant in a direct sense. It might be relevant in some sort of like contextual sense, but not in a direct sense, because why is defendants, right, responsible for other people's harassment, right? Unless they somehow causally directed it, like they literally hired people to do it or like told specific people to do that, right? In a very specific way. Then we have a whole bunch of example tweets, which I saw earlier, which is just tweets from other people. So I'm just going to skip over them. And yeah, they're mean tweets, but like, that's how social media works, right? So, you know, you're a public figure, you're going to get a ton of mean tweets. And you could say it's disproportionately mean, probably true, but it's almost certainly not directly relevant to the case. So luckily, we can skip a lot of this stuff. It includes like a tweet where she says that she doesn't hate anybody, whatever. Okay, that's going to go to her state of mind, right? So let's keep going. Where does it get relevant again here? Luckily, we can skip a lot. Okay. Okay, so this is going to become important because I believe Disney said that it wasn't just her tweets that kind of like added more to it later. It was her likes as well. So like, I guess she liked things they didn't like her liking. But this says, quote, late last week, this is from a news article, quote, late last week, Carano liked a tweet on Twitter that allegedly mocked users who practice this method of self-identification. Excuse me. I think pronouns or something like that. However, as of writing, the tweet has been unliked and has yet to be specifically identified. So they're almost certainly pulling this quote out because they're going to dispute the factual basis by which these unlikable likes even exist, right? And this is actually, one of the things they're trying to set up here with the context is that Gina Carano isn't like, she's not like some sort of like gender ideologue, right? Like she doesn't have strong opinions about a lot of these topics, and historically she has shown that through her social media posts, basically. So basically, they're saying that her public image doesn't match her actual beliefs. Okay.
Kagaro says prospective employers looking through Twitter likes for offensive things is just a nightmare.
Yeah, right. Because there's so many reasons you could like something. It's crazy. A like is very little context. Then there's this whole thing about her putting beep boop bop as her pronouns in her bio, which she said was because people harassing her about putting the pronouns. I'm just summarizing so we can skip past it. People asking her to put pronouns in her bio were like bots, basically. That they force people to behave in their programmatic robotic way. That's the way that she explains the reasoning, and they put posts basically of her explaining it post fact, right? So again, this goes to the reasonableness of the dispute. Okay, so this is important. Defendants engage in harassment of their own. However, like her online abusers, defendants were not satisfied. They subjected. So this, I think, should have gone before the other section. If I were a lawyer, I'd have put this first. I wouldn't have put like the public's backlash stuff. That could go to like emotional distress damages, I suppose, but those arguments are kind of hard to make usually. They subjected Carano to long phone calls demanding an explanation and criticizing her for not embracing what some see to be mandatory solidarity with a vocal element of the transgender activist community. Even when she expressed the defendants' demands were excessive and asked for some time away from the constant meetings, defendants refused, demanding that she continue with her, quote, re-education program. It's an interesting quotation. There's no citation, which is odd, but again, notice these things when you read these things. Why is there no number next to it? Could be that they just missed it, which happens, or it could be that the quote has dubious sourcing, right? That doesn't mean there's no merit to it, to the claim. It just, again, just read critically. Defendants required Carano to meet with representatives of GLAAD. I didn't know those things existed outside of high school, but okay. A national organization that promotes LGBTQ plus acceptance, something she willfully did. So it's interesting that she did go to the things. Carano had a very positive discussion with two of their representatives, including a 90-minute Zoom meeting, even reviewing several documents they asked her to watch. Okay. So this is going to be...
he's got to go, but you'll catch the VOD.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I'm trying to speed through this here. This was longer than I remembered. I feel like it didn't take me long to skim through it, but I guess the explanations it does. So I'll skip. Let's see. More online bullying. We don't care about that. Like I said, defendants strike again. The Star Wars references. Oh man.
Well, it should be striking back, right?
Oh, okay. Maybe it's an unintended.
I think. Well, I think they can't say back because they've already, already alleged that they struck the first time. They're trying to kind of use the reference, but not. They can't fully use it, I guess.
Right. So they're getting the boomer judge to laugh again, and hopefully continue reading and not skip over the rest of the lawsuit. Because judges do that. As much as people want to say they don't, they absolutely do not read things a lot. Just like you or me, they get bored and they go, I could do fine just like skimming this, which is horrible. But some judges do that. Some judges do that if you watch court cases, because you'll read the filing beforehand and the judge will ask a really dumb question that was talked about for like half the pages of the complaint. And you're like, you didn't read it. Like, there's no other explanation here, Let's see here. Okay, so this stuff I don't think we care about, not terribly important. Bunch of social media disputes. Let's see here. Defendants post-termination smear campaign. So then they're going to talk about how Disney then went on to defame or destroy her credibility, her ability to get more work. By going on a smear campaign or characterize a smear campaign afterwards. Okay, the aftermath of defendants' actions. And this is where they're going to definitely hype up the damages part, because they don't want the judge to say, okay, well, maybe you have a valid claim, but there are no damages. So I'm still going to dismiss this case, right? So if someone defames you, but no one hears it, right? That'd be like one example, right? It's like, okay, literal defamation happened in a public setting, but the traffic was so loud, like no one could possibly hear it. So there's no damages. So, that would be a reason to dismiss. Okay. Let's see here. Social media posts from Carano's co-stars. Now, why would they want to put this? They would put this because they want to, again, show a reasonableness or a lack of reasonableness behind Disney's reaction, given that her co-stars would react otherwise, right? See, like people who are still there working with Disney don't think that this is a problem, but Disney does think it's a problem. So very adjacent people. Carano respects the rights of her co-stars to express their views on social media, even if they differ from her own, and she remains personally fond of each of them. However, defendants' treatment of Carano stands in stark contrast to defendants' embrace of her male co-stars and other male employees. Again, there's going to be a sexist claim in here, so they have to keep harping on this. So the following examples are provided to demonstrate the discriminatory treatment Carano endured at the hands of defendants. One of Carano's co-stars was Pedro Pascal, a male actor who played the role of the Mandalorian. Okay, so the dude. Pascal was active on social media, often expressing his views on Black Lives Matter movement, LGBTQ plus rights, protests for abortion rights, and the 2020 election. For example, in 2015, Pascal made the following post drawing a clear distinction between himself and conservatives. So here's the quotation. Conservatives used gossip columns and headlines to manipulate city politics in the 40s, and it worked. Let's be better than them. Okay. On August 16th, 2017, Pascal made the following post comparing President Donald Trump to Hitler. This is inevitable. Like, the moment you hear about, the moment you hear, oh, they fired her because she made a reference to the Nazis, literally everybody does this. Like, it's one of the things where
Godwin's Law, that's called.
Godwin's Law, there you go. Everything regresses to, comparisons to Nazis. Now, are some of those comparisons valid or invalid? I mean, that's up to you to decide, given the context of any particular conversation. But it's so common that, undoubtedly they're the example this strong, and it's from the lead actor of the show, so making it even more pointed, right? But let's actually read, let's not make a mistake, let's actually read the post itself, not just the picture, which could make us angry, although it says 45, so we're kind of already, we're already there with the picture itself, because the SWAS thing, I don't want to say the word, is reshaped into a 45, so we all see that. But then the actual description says 45 hashtag Nazi sympathizer hashtag our president, yada yada. So there you go. This is a 1-to-1, pretty close to 1-to-1, seemingly, example of a similar type comparison, which is going to be one of the strongest arguments, which means I really think this should have been farther up on the lawsuit, for sure. Because again, a judge could just go, I kind of get the point, and skip through. But writing hard lawsuits is hard, so I'm not trying to bag on them too hard. The 2017 post was not the only time Pascal compared President Trump and those who voted for him as to Nazis. On June 20th, 2018, Pascal compared the United States' response to those entering the country illegally to concentration camps of Nazi Germany in the following post. Pretty inevitable. Pretty inevitable. And that's a pretty, I mean, you even use the historical image there. It's interesting. And again, in 2020, Pascal made the following post only to delete it shortly after. Oh, wow. So Pedro Pascal is trying to hide. Oh, so I guess it's the only way they could get the source. This is definitely going to need some working out in court to validate this primary source. So, but anyway, it's a screenshot and a post from someone else posting the screenshot instead of like the source screenshot, likely because it was deleted. There's probably ways for them to. They would just subpoena Mr. Pascal to come to court and testify as to whether he posted this or not. That would be the way to resolve it.
I see.
Under penalty of perjury, right? So the assumption is that he wouldn't lie, although that's quite the assumption for any witness. Witnesses lie a lot. Losers in 1865, Confederate flag. I don't know if I can say that. Losers in 1945. Movement common in the 1945, losers in 2020, and then there's a MAGA hat. So there you go. There's some parallelism going on in his post. We all understand what that means. Defendants did not comment on, let alone condemn Pascal's social media comments, which is very important to the claim for sure. In 2020, Pascal posted two Disney.
Yeah, that seems like a hard claim for them to know. Like, how do they know that the defendants didn't say anything to Pascal?
They say publicly, so I assume they looked for all the public comments that Disney has potentially made on Pascal. But again, this is just a complaint, so Disney could just whip it out and be like, "No, I did." See, right,
and then they also can't know whether there was any private communication with him.
Right. But I think the public is important in this case because it goes to the damages to her character, right? So her ability to get new work, right, is going to be part of the argument. So that even if they said stuff privately, that wouldn't affect the damages to her public appearance, if that makes sense. If they didn't say that also publicly. In 2020, Pascal posted two Disney-owned Muppet characters, Bert and Ernie, as activists wearing transgender and LGBTQ plus pride flag and promoting Black Lives Matter and defund the police. Upon information and belief, that phrase, I'll give you a hot tip. That phrase, upon information and belief, in a lot of lawsuits, that means the lawyer does not want to get in trouble for using what amounts to unsubstantiated claim. Wow, I'm losing my voice. Excuse me. So they're going to say something, and they're not going to provide a citation. That's the reason that they put upon information and belief. They're saying, we think this is true. So don't yell at me, judge, if it turns out to not be true. And actually, to be honest, you usually see it more in these kinds of complaints. But that could be a style thing. Upon information and belief, Pascal was not disciplined. So, they wouldn't be able to know whether he was disciplined or not behind the scenes. So that's why they're saying that. They're saying, to the best of our knowledge, Pascal was not disciplined, requiring to review documentaries on any of the topics or speak to individuals with contrary points of view. His employment was not terminated. Defendants made no public statements. Okay, so this is the sort of disparate treatment thing. And then we got Mark Hamill. Yeah. I do a movement common in the 1940s and 30s, a thing. And there's a comparison to this picture right here.
It's funny because on this on like the on Skype, I can't really see the preview, so I get like the reaction before I can like see like what the heck we're looking at. I now as you can see it on YouTube. Okay.
Yes, although people are clearly pointing, so this is kind of a dumb post. Like you could literally see everyone's like they literally have a finger forward and they're just pointing. So it's kind of a dumb post. This, of course, is nothing new for Hamill, who from 2016 described Donald Trump as Vladimir Putin's puppet and KKK's candidate. Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to go on tangents. That's a little funny. Okay, so on and so forth. There's this picture of Mark Hamill, like putting Trump symbology on N people's N grouping symbology. And unlike Carano, when Hamill was accused of liking a transphobic tweet, his explanation was accepted by defendants without question. So Mark Hamill says, "Ignorance is no excuse, but I liked the tweet without understanding what the last line of the hashtags meant. It was the first 4 lines I liked and didn't realize it had any transphobic connotation." So he liked this post by J.K. Rowling, and I guess people got mad at him for liking it, and then Disney didn't do the same things upon explanation. They accepted the explanation. That's what basically they're saying. And again, this is going to be work to their favor because Mark Hamill is a dude, right? So this is going to work to their sexist claims. Defendants even rehired Guardians of the Galaxy director James Gunn, a male, in 2019 after terminating him for media posts years earlier, such as, quote, "I like when little boys..." Whoa, I'm not even going to say this. Oh, gosh, why? Why is that a thing? Okay, anyway. What? Sorry, that was, I guess, what I skimmed over. I didn't read that. That's wild. Okay, so he said something extremely inappropriate. And, quote, "The best thing about..." Oh, gosh. Okay, yeah, no, this is wild. Okay. You can read it yourself. It's about things that are highly sexual and bad. Illegal in many ways. Wow, okay, yeah, it gets worse. So I'm not going to read any of that. You can go read the suit yourself. That's pretty horrible. Okay, now we get to the law. And this is where I think most people will be surprised. Because when I read this, I was surprised. Carano realleges and incorporates by reference all prior paragraphs of this complaint as thoroughly as though fully set forth herein. Section 1101 of the California Labor Code provides, quote, no employer shall make, adopt, or enforce any rule, regulation, or policy that A, forbidding or preventing employees from engaging or participating in politics or from becoming candidates for public office, B, controlling or directing or tending to control or direct the political activities of affiliations of employees. That's a crazy law, by the way. Like, that's wild. I had no idea this was a thing in California, but you can expect if this lawsuit is successful, that there's going to be tons of 1101 lawsuits like after, because it's so broad. It's so broad. It says literally forbidding or preventing employees from engaging or participating. So like you could say, maybe argue engaging is like going to a rally or something like this. Participating? I mean, in politics or from becoming candidates, which is not relevant here. Controlling or directing or tending to control or direct the political activities? So now we're just talking about actions. Like, it's so broad. It's like literally any action, right? At least, again, the legal stuff is going to require a lot more lawyerliness because there might be precedents associated with this thing, and there might be laws that constrain this by implication, right? But on its face, prima facie, right? When we look at a law like this, that's crazy. So then I looked up the history of this law because I was like, what is this? I was like, why is it so broad and ridiculous? The best I could find is that this law was almost certainly passed in light of the McCarthy era, to protect Hollywood from employers, so the studios, who were trying to kick people off of their roster for the sake of their communistic beliefs that people didn't agree with. So they passed this law, super broad, in light of that thing. That's not going to help. That's going to hurt very badly for Disney, for context. So even if you put the law in context, that's kind of...
So I'm curious.
It's kind of bad.
You know, there are a lot of different laws, obviously, in California and the United States, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do lawyers, I'm sure, lawyers will specialize in certain areas. So maybe like, I don't know, as a lawyer that specializes in these types of cases about being fired, right, from your job or whatever.
Labor
right?
law,
so,
that would be the
labor law in California specifically, maybe, right? And then so they, are there like not enough laws where like they would actually know this, or is it like they're like kind of like looking through every law trying to figure out like
They probably know this already. If they're they're going to be big law firm labor lawyers, right? So they almost certainly already knew about 1101. They just pulled it. They were like, we already know 1101 is what we're going to go for, So they almost certainly already knew this. So this is crazy. Then I looked up to see if this was normal in the States. It is not normal. Like this is not usually a law you find in almost any other state, which actually is bad, again, for Disney. The reason why is because now you can say that this wasn't an attempt to codify some sort of like English common law standard or some sort of constitutional standard. This is California being itself and like saying, we specially want to do this. I don't know. That this is I was reading the suit and I was like, if this is going to come down to a First Amendment claim, which it would fail on its face, it's definitely just for publicity. If it's going to come down to a defamation claim, then almost everything Disney said is probably an opinion, right? If it's going to come down to like a wrongful, and I say legally, intentions are different. I'm saying legally provable. It's not provable to not be opinion, almost certainly, right? And then like maybe there's some sort of like wrongful firing thing, in specific labor law where like you are being so unreasonable it's ridiculous, and then you owe the person's wages or something like this. This exists in certain states to some level or not. I didn't expect this, honestly. And it's because it's not normal. That's why I didn't expect it. I didn't expect to see something like this in law, but there it is. So that's kind of crazy. But further quoting Labor Code 1101, in violation of Section 1101A of the Labor Code, defendants terminated Carano's employment. Oh, this is not a quote, sorry. This is just their explanation. Defendants terminated Carano's employment based on her posts, thereby unlawfully forbidding or preventing Carano from engaging or participating in politics. Honestly, this lawsuit probably could have been a lot shorter just based off of this premise alone. On its face, right? Because we're going to see the reply from defendants. And I guarantee you, the reply from defendants is going to tell you whether this claim has merit or not, because they will... When defendants don't have arguments, they start going crazy, saying all kinds of stuff that doesn't matter. They just put fluff in their lawsuit because they don't know what else to do, right? They're hoping that the judge will get distracted by looking the shiny thing over in that corner instead. So we'll find out whether there's a legal argument on Disney's side against 1101. And in violation of 1101B of the Labor Code, defendants terminated Carano's employment and refused to hire her for other promised roles based on her posts, thereby unlawfully controlling, directing, or tending to control or direct Carano's political activities or affiliations. I think 1101B is even worse. Political activities is like literally as broad as you could possibly imagine. That's kind of wild. Section 1102, so now we have another section of the California Labor Code provides, quote, no employer shall coerce or influence or attempt to coerce or influence his employees through or by means of threat or of discharge or loss of employment to adopt or follow or refrain from adopting or following any particular course or line of political action or political activity. Oh my gosh. That's, again, super broad, like ridiculously broad. But it's not ambiguous. So it's like, it just means what it says. So I'm like, I don't know. Like, that's pretty crazy. In violation of Section 1102, defendants coerced, influenced, and or attempted to coerce or influence Carano because of her posts. So what was all that talk about her attending all this stuff, right? Like, that's going to go to this 1102 is going to be like where that stuff comes into play. So saying she must watch this documentary or like go to this training or whatever, the only reason they told her to do that, it's not like they told everyone they need to do this training, right? They said, you have to do it because of your post, which is like, I mean, that's exactly what 1102 prohibits, pretty much exactly, which is crazy. And again, if this suit works out, there's going to be tons of 1102 suits out the gate, you know. In violation of 1102, defendants coerced, influence. Okay, I read that already. Okay. The termination of Carano's employment and the refusal to hire her for other promised roles was subsequently motivated by defendants' disagreement with Carano's political beliefs and their actions and related defamatory statements. So they're saying defamatory, which is interesting. That's a legal term now. Caused Carano harm. Now, I think any defamation claim is going to have a much harder time. Much harder time. They might get dismissed off the bat while the 1101 and 1102 claims go to trial. I could definitely imagine that. Defendants attempt to curtail Carano's political activities outside the workplace and control her political expression standing alone implies an employer policy in violation of sections 1101 and 1102. Then they have citations. So if you're not used to reading court cases, all these see this case, that case, that case, that case, those are just things they think are relevant. They could be precedents, depending. Usually they would say precedent because that's such a strong thing to say. It means any precedent binds a lower court. So the lower court has to follow the precedent if it's a precedential case, right? So they didn't say that, so I'm inclined to believe these cases are just related, right? So they might offer guidance to the judge. And judges will look at these related cases for guidance if they're not sleeping. And literally, I've literally seen judges sleep on the bench. Which is kind of nuts. But that does happen too.
This is a lot to read. And when I thought it was pretty interesting so far. But I was thinking, I was like, man, like, I mean, actually, like, this is like just like something I just read for fun type thing, you know? Like, oh, this is interesting, right? And then you get to like see other cases and like, if I were to want to do a good job in, you know, like, it was just for interest as like a job, to do a good job, I have to read all these cases and like, wow, like just name dropping them suddenly makes them you get to read a lot more.
Well, I would suggest when you're just starting doing this, just look up a summary. I think you're on the primary source for this case. If you're trying to understand this case, just look up a summary. It's okay. You're not a shortcut, you know, that process. Just say, look up Spedley versus Capps and just read, especially if it's a really old case. They're going to be very defined, like law school type, like definitions for any particular case that's like famous and old, right?
Right.
And I'm not saying to rely on that long term if the case relies on that so heavily, but we don't know what it relies on yet because the case is not at trial. So it's okay probably to just look at what they might be using it for. Similarly, if plaintiff had been instructed to curtail her gay-oriented political activities outside the office, this would constitute a violation of 1101. Why is that statement there? That statement is super important. This statement is reminding the judge, despite the judge's political beliefs, because judges have political beliefs, right? And they do color their views, even if they don't want them to. Like, it's human, right? To forget how to not be biased when you read a specific thing. You know, you kind of just overlay because you've just been droning on reading this stuff, right? So this statement is important. They're saying, even if you take up the opposing political side's views and did the same thing, it would still be illegal. So what does that get the judge to do? It gets the judge to substitute the actions for like maybe Mark Hamill's statements and say, would this violate 1101? If that would violate 1101, this would also violate 1101, right? It gets them to think outside of the polemic of the particular case. more cases are cited. The allegation that Ross was terminated as a result of, so this is about a specific case. The allegation that Ross was terminated as a result of his political activity is sufficient to plausibly suggest the existence of such a policy, which probably has to do with like it doesn't have to be a written policy of Disney's or Lucasfilms to fire. They don't have to have it written down somewhere, right? It's like the action itself makes the policy, if that makes sense. Or at least is enough to. The termination of Carano's employment and the refusal to hire her for other promised roles served as an implicit warning and message to defendants' other employers that the expression of views departing from liberal perspectives on Black Lives Matter movement, the coronavirus, transgender issues, and political polarization would not be tolerated. See the case. So I guess this case, I almost guarantee this case is probably about group threatenings, right? It's actually happened in 2023, which is pretty recent. This case is cited for 2023. So if people have been succeeding on 1101 and 1102 recently, it's even worse. Like, it's like, dang, like, you're not even just dragging this out of the cobwebs. This is like something that's been used last year, you know? Defendants' actions were done with the knowledge, approval, and even at the direction of individuals who serve as officers, directors, and managing agents for each defendant. Section 1105 of the California Labor Code provides, quote, nothing in the chapter shall prevent the injured employee from recovering damages from his employee for injury suffered under the violation of this chapter. So this is in the same, if you were to go find the Labor Code and read these sections, this is in the same Labor Code, right? Oh, actually, no, it says Civil Code. California Civil Code. Oh, so this is not 1105 following 1102. This is a different 1105. Provides nothing in this chapter shall prevent. Oh, okay. So probably something in the Civil Labor Code says something constraining.
No, it says section 1105 of the California Labor Code, right?
It says California Civil Code in the suit.
We're talking about 1105.
Oh, yeah, you're right. Oh, okay. The Civil Code contains Labor Code. That was a dumb. Yeah, okay. So it's 1105 after these other sections, right? So basically the law is saying anything we said earlier should not be construed as like not giving employee damages, which there might be something in there that's ambiguous, or they just did that as a covering statement, right? Just to make sure that that is understood by the courts. And they're just putting that in there so the judge cannot find a hole to scroll through and say, well, there are no damages, so dismissed, right? These sections provide employees with a private right of action against employers. So this is basically saying they have the right to sue under these sections, that it is, in fact, something that can go to court. And then there's a little summary statement. And then maybe I won't go through this here because I didn't think it was as pertinent. Maybe I'll read. Okay. Section 98.6 of the California Labor Code provides in a pertinent part, a person shall not discharge an employee or in any manner discriminate, retaliate, or take any adverse action against an employee or applicant for employment because the employee or applicant engaged in any conduct delineated in this chapter, including the conduct described in subdivision K of Section 96 and Chapter 5, commencing with 1101. So now they're saying this statement here controls over 1101 as well. It literally says that in the law itself. So it's not even just the action of coercion, the action of even applying. So now Carano's going to say, look, I was promised these roles. I wasn't even applying. I was promised these other roles. Like, they told me there's no contract, right? Because they never pulled up a contract. So I assume there's no contract. They didn't put it in writing. There's no promised contract. But applying these things can't be done to me. And I'm not even applying. They told me I already had it, which a reasonable person would conclude from those facts is that Disney didn't think it was unreasonable to employ her again for other reasons, you see? That it must be those political reasons, as described earlier, that are the reasons which would then violate this chapter as well. So there you go. I think that's the most damning stuff in here. is the law itself. There's the sex discrimination statute as well. So they're gonna. I think this is a much overall, after reading the case, I think this is a much more tenuous case, simply because just simply arguing that male employees did X with no repercussions and female employees did X with repercussions when she's the only example of female employee. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to get dismissed. I just mean just general persuasiveness is not terribly persuasive on the law. So I'm going to say that this last sort of filing is a lot more tenuous. But they know they're filing in California. So they might think that a jury would go for this argument of sexism because of the demographics, because of the judge's demographics. This might be the case. They might go for this argument. So they're throwing it in there like good lawyers. So there you go. That's pretty much it. It ends with a sign-off. I wonder if there's a corny Star Wars reference in the ending here. No, this is the prayer for relief, which is just what is she asking for? Yeah, no, they didn't end up with the Star Wars reference, which is a missed opportunity. So there you go. That's the Carano lawsuit gone over. And I went over this, one, because it's related to film and I talk about film stuff. But more importantly, undoubtedly, regardless of what you think about the whole situation, you learn stuff by reading this that you couldn't learn through an article.
That was like multiple articles worth of information.
Right. So, like, it doesn't matter. Like, it's so important to read these things if you want to actually develop a real opinion about them. And, like, the amount of sort of piling on that we do. So, like, mentally, what we tend to do is we read an article that gives us a framework for understanding a particular issue, but we might file that away in the corner of our brain that says, well, I never verified that. So, like, I'm going to say that 50-50 chance that framework was true. But it was the only article you read, right? Then another article about that subject, right, you've kind of filed away. Another article pops up, and it's about the same subject, and it's the only framework you know to apply. So what do? You apply it. None of this is happening consciously. This is just source bias, right? I'm not even saying the sources themselves have to be biased. I'm just saying your only exposure to that one small thing causes a source bias now, where now the other thing gets read and then another thing gets read. And now everything's being read in the context of each other. The first thing that you were saying was 50-50. You forget it was 50-50 now because it's the means by which you understand the whole situation. How do you fix that? You be self-conscious and self-aware of it, first of all. And two, the only way to fight it is by going to the sources and developing your own opinion, which is arduous and long. But, if you want to really have a judgment and opinion of people's or topics, the only way I would suggest to do it in a way that is ethical and fair to the people who are potentially on the other side is by giving them the light of day, which this lawsuit, again, I told you, my preconceived bias with this lawsuit was, forget the actual topic itself, the law probably is not going to be on her side. I had no idea California 1101 and 1102 existed, and nothing I saw, like even posts from Carano's team mentioned, they never quoted 1101 and 1102. Disney, in fighting back on this, or like all the polemics on Twitter, right, they don't mention 1101 or 1102, right? So how would I know otherwise? Everyone's arguing over things that they don't understand, actually. So you could actually read this. It's legible. It's human readable. Lawsuits you don't need some fancy, 5 PhD person to be your lens to read that. You might need some insight on very particular things, but they're particular, like precedents and things like this, right? Like, how does the general constitutional law work? Okay, maybe there's some things in there where those people are a little bit more useful, but you don't even understand how to parse through the different opinions of people with 5 PhDs if you don't even understand basic law. So this is me encouraging you, challenging you to read primary sources And yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say. Also, the AI generated a pretty fire. That's pretty good.
I was thinking that too. I was gonna say, I was like, is that actually AI generated?
Yeah,
wow, it looks really good.
I was surprised. I typed in Gina Carano, like arguing at courtroom drawing. You know, like those courtroom drawings that you see. It's a little too like polished for a courtroom drawing, but you know, I get it. You know, it looks pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
So
what's with the courtroom drawings, anyways? Like, why do they exist?
It's probably some tradition, you know, like before there were photography was easy, you know. You know, you get an artist's impression too of people's moods and stuff. I don't really know, but almost certainly something traditional.
All right.
I think it's cool. I'm here for it.
Yeah.
So there you go. You learned something today, and let me know if you want me to. When Disney does the reply, I will not go through it in this detail because that took too long. But I can give you my like opinion and cite very specific paragraphs. But I want to do this at least once, so you understood how to read. And then next time I talk about it, you don't take my word for it, even my word for it. You just go to it to yourself and be like, oh, let me read this paragraph in context. Beautiful. Do it. I promise you your life will be better. So with that, I am done blabbing.
It reminds me of when I was reading that thing about, what was it? It actually pulled up the primary source of something. Had to do with, was it Microsoft or some big company? I think it was Microsoft. What's the controversy? I think it was some controversy or something. And I read the like the original like transcript of the meeting, and I was like, it does not say this. I'm confused. I forget what it was though.
Yeah, it happens all the time. Like very extremely often. Journalists, they're clickbait machines now. You know, like that's their job, is to drive clicks to the website. You know, it's very hard to trust just an article. You know, I highly recommend you vet it. Mm-hmm. Cool. Well, shall we continue on?
Yeah, although I will say it is very late, and I gotta go to work tomorrow.
Do you want to do your topic first, and then?
I was gonna say maybe I just don't do my topic this time.
No, I killed your topic.
No, that's okay. I mean, the way I see it is like I just have more time to think about it. So I was like, okay, it's like you know, it's like neutral to me, you know.
Okay, sorry.
That's all good.
Yeah, I guess I should have timed myself when I was reading it. Like, oh, how long will this take me to read? Because it might have taken me a half hour. I didn't even realize it. And then to explain it is like another, you know, however long.
Currently, we're 2 hours and 20 minutes into the podcast, which is around ending time, I think.
Oh, I messed up. Sorry.
All good.
Okay, hopefully it was at least entertaining.
Oh yeah, that was a good segment though. Yeah, it was a good walk.
Okay. And I guess we'll finish off with arguing with Reddit, or do we want to just end it? I don't know.
I can.
We can make arguing with Reddit short.
Okay. Dang it. I should have looked at the time more too. Sorry, guys. Let's see here. So I'll do this. We'll run through this really fast. Do you want to... Actually, I'll do the transition, and then you can introduce the segment.
Okay.
Here we go.
Mixed Media Music.
All right. Welcome to Mixed Media Music, the portion of Mixed Media podcast dedicated to all things music with a particular emphasis on classical and on media music. Tonight, we are doing Arguing with Reddit, which, if you're familiar with this, my co-hosts and I found some hot takes or questions, things from the internet or from Reddit. Normally, though, my thing is actually not from Reddit. Yeah, and I suppose I should introduce myself. Sorry, I'm trying to be quick. I'm the main host for Mixed Media Music. My name is Ben Costello. I'm a flute player and media composer.
My name is Irving Nestor. I'm a filmmaker and media entrepreneur. I own a company called Ariella, based out of Mount Carmel, Pennsylvania, and I talk too much. That's what I found out today.
My name is Nathan Nestor. I'm a 3D modeler and video game developer.
All right. Yeah, so we should have 3 questions, hot takes, whatnot related to music. So whenever you're ready to pull something up, Irving, I'm ready to go.
All right, so this one's from Nathan, if you want to explain. Wrong one there.
Yes. So mine is from, sorry, I forgot to pull it up beforehand. Here it is. Okay. Yeah, mine's from R// Composer. And the title is, Does Copying quote-unquote good pieces improve your skills? By copying, I mean just pulling the sheet music of a piece and copying it all down. I heard someone say that doing this is a waste of time. Is that true? And I'm realizing that at this point, we're on episode 100 and something, and I'm starting to forget whether or not certain things have been discussed. So I was looking at this, like, has this been talked about? I feel like maybe. I don't remember.
Honestly, I don't remember either. But you know, I kind of mentioned this as you've been watching our show. But if you go back to our news segment, I was talking about copying, right? Engraving.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, I first kind of got into it, engraving. Well, my initial, experiments with it were as a composer, back in early days of high school. But then I kind of got interested in it from trying to learn more about like producing professional looking parts for film scoring, and also I'm taking film scores that are publicly available. Going back to, we can have a discussion. You can find my discussion on this many times from the very early days of our podcast. And doing that, like creating parts for it. And, so honestly, I find it to be a really fascinating exercise because, last week I was talking a lot about my score here of American in Paris, right? And it's one thing where I can, look at it and I can listen to it and I can compare what I see to what I hear. But it is actually quite, I find that it forces you to kind of get inside the music when you're copying a score, whether you're literally doing it by hand or by, on software program, because the little act of like, I'm putting a D right here, right in the oboe, forces you to think, oh, like I recognize the oboe's playing D, and you can ask yourself, why are they doing that? And even if you don't ask yourself that explicitly, it's a way of like really noticing every detail. And even if not like explicitly, it's all kind of being noticed by your brain in some way. So I find it to be a really great way of learning things. It's also a bonus if you want to take something apart that way. Like most modern software programs, for doing this sort of thing, if you enter just the oboe line, you can hear just the oboe line being played, or you can mute the other lines or whatever. Or you can, I just want to hear everyone play for just this measure, right? Something like that, or just the brass play this measure. You have more ability to do that than you do just using your ears and your eyes looking at the score. So I think it's a great way of learning things.
Yeah, it makes complete sense.
Probably not something you can really do with like a film or a video game. I mean, I guess you could try to like recreate the scene, from Casablanca or something, but
people will do that on occasion. They'll reshoot scenes to like learn how they function, which I've actually done before.
Okay.
And it was actually insightful, but it's also just so much effort.
Yeah, it seems like a lot of effort to do that. Sorry, what were you going to say, Nathan?
Oh, before I get to what I was gonna say, I guess going off of what everyone was saying. Yeah, some people do that for video games as well, like specific mechanics, not the entire video game typically, unless it's a very simple thing. Obviously, people make tic-tac-toe, or whatever, as just like small projects to get to learn how to make video games. But if you want to learn how to do wall running, for example, it's the reason is kind of different for why you do that in music. It's less about like the why they did that, but more like how they did that, right? The hard part, it's so that's how. So sometimes people do that, but yeah, for a different reason. But I was gonna say, oh yeah, I did do that one time with music where I tried to copy down a song, and it was Nero by Covet, which is a math rock song. I didn't finish it. I could not. It was impossible. The time signature changed way too many times. Man, I don't know. I was like, oh, I actually really like the song, so maybe it'll like help me, get through this, whatever. And I was listening to it, and I was like it's literally just me listening to the same section over and over and over again, trying to figure out what is happening. Like, what is what's the time signature?
Are you also transcribing it though? Like, you're trying to figure out the note, like what note does guitar play here and then there, or okay, that's an additional layer beyond what this person is talking about, where you're again also extremely helpful. I think that this is more referring to like, I have the score of American Paris right here. I could go and enter it note by note.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay. This next one is not going to appear properly.
Yeah, it's probably mine.
Yeah, it's not. It's actually the source. It's like some weird, like, I don't know why it's like coming up as a transparency. It's very bizarre.
That is weird. Yeah. Okay. Well, this is an article in the Washington Post from 3 days ago, titled "As Opera Companies Struggle to Survive a Sustained Note of Alarm." And honestly, I found it to be very interesting because, I mean, I know that opera is in a lot of trouble, but actually some of the numbers that they give about like even the world's largest opera organizations being in very serious financial trouble was kind of astonishing. I had no idea it was quite that bad. They also note that like a bunch of not only are like some of the biggest companies really struggling, but a lot of these smaller operas are completely folding. Like just very recently, Maryland Lyric Opera dissolved. Yeah, so I find it to be a really eye-opening article. But the article is it's a little bit delving into like financial side, but it has to ask what is the solution. A lot of interviews with opera company CEOs, and they have all sorts of fancy things they're saying. It's not the cost structure. It's not the word. Sorry, it's the problem is the post-COVID cost structure doesn't operate the same way as the pre-COVID cost structure. It's not audience retention. It's not donors. Whatever. This is, I don't think, a very useful way of approaching it. I don't know. Maybe that is true literally for LA Opera, that the way of the cost structure of putting this on is different, but I don't think that's why opera as an art form is struggling, personally. So there are, in the interview, the director of the Washington National Opera and the Kennedy Center, which is basically the only major opera company in the United States, at least, that is doing okay. But that's also because they are basically buoyed by the government and they can't go under, because it's the National Opera. But they have reduced their both the number of productions they do per year and the number of shows within each production as a way of cutting costs. But the article is more about what is the way to make opera sustainable, and the author is kind of debating this, and they note that the opera is always something that has evolved. Like even back in the 1740s, basically nobody wanted to in England wanted to hear opera, and Handel was what he did. He was an opera composer, so like, well, I don't want to change how I'm going to write. I'm just going to basically have an opera, but it'll be on a religious subject, and nobody will act, and oratorio, and then we get from that the Messiah, right? Like the literally maybe the most popular, most popular, but the most performed piece of classical music ever, right? So there is that. The opera has always kind of adapted since its inception. But this person also, the author is also kind of, debating some of the common things that people will say are the reasons for opera's decline. So this is a quote here. He says, talk to the average opera fan about why this is happening, and you'll get thrown a familiar smelling bouquet of theories. Contemporary opera is terrible. Stop messing with the classics. Something about the young people. All right, so I want to debate this a little bit. I don't know that anybody really has much of an issue with contemporary opera, because there's a lot of contemporary operas that are being written, but they're not really being performed very much. Now, maybe this is because nobody will go see them. You could say that this is kind of a microcosm of like the problem with the classical music as a whole. But it's more extreme for opera. Now, I would say that the reason this is more extreme for opera is because opera is it has more of, even more than classical music, it has kind of this air of like being an elite thing that you do, right? And it, even though they're going to give you the subtitles if it's a good opera company, right? It's something in a foreign language, and it's long, right? It can be over 3 hours of runtime for the show, not to mention intermission, right? So it's kind of like musical theater, like Broadway, except it's even fancier, and it has all the stigma of classical music, but even more. So of course that's going to affect the number of people who are going to be able to go see this and have any interest in seeing it. Is the issue that contemporary operas are too avant-garde? I don't know. I don't know that that's really the problem, because people aren't going to see operas anyway. So it's not just they're going to, this opera company is doing something too crazy, stop messing with the classics. I don't know that I'm aware of a lot of people really being upset about this. If anything, what I see is people wanting these classic operas to be updated, because unlike classical music, they're very narrative, right? It's almost like watching a film, but the film, it could be from like the 1600s. It hasn't changed in its content, right? So it's even more likely to than something newer, or something that like doesn't have an explicit narrative, like a lot of classical music. It's even more likely to have things that are just not really compatible with the modern world, or maybe outdated, prejudicial views. With anything, what people are a lot of people I'm aware of are kind of tired of opera being even more stuck in the past, and refusing to not only do newer things, but treat older things, if you're not going to cut them from your repertoire, do older things in a new and fresh way. Find ways to make it more relevant, or at least contextualize some problematic things in it. Like, for instance, there's Madame Butterfly, right? Puccini's famous opera. There's a lot of problematic things about the treatment of the Japanese culture, right? And you could take the approach of not putting it on at all. You could take the approach of trying to address some of these questions that might not have occurred to Puccini in 1910 or whatever year, something around there when he wrote it, but are relevant issues now in terms of cultural questions. You could do that. I think a lot of people feel that opera isn't doing enough of that, and the author saying that the issue is not that with young people wanting to see it. Well, I think that is a problem. I mean, it's a problem with all classical music. You got to convince people who want to watch Hamilton to go listen to an opera. And I mean, you got to come up with a way to make it have
It's
that
all
appeal.
cultural, right? Like at the end of the day, it's building a culture, right?
Right. And if you're not, you know, if it doesn't have it, you got to find a way to like to advertise it in that way, right? What about Aida is going to be appealing to people? I mean, you could do the Elton John version of it, right? He has his own version of Aida. Okay, great. I don't think we're doing enough of that, and I do think it's an issue, right? There's some statistics saying that like for some opera companies, the average age of the last decade went down from like 64 to 59. I don't think that's enough, right? that's not setting these opera companies up for enough
Funnily,
success.
in a morbid way, that could be caused by like literally people dying.
Right. Yeah. The question is right. What is the source of the average age going down a few years? So yeah, the article ends with the suggestion that, you know, as much as opera companies as much as opera companies can surgically cut and strategically innovate, the audience will have the biggest part to play in keeping American opera from reaching its final act. This may seem obvious, but here it goes. If you're an opera fan, go. That's probably true, but also opera companies, I think, have a pretty huge responsibility for getting people to want to go. You can't just say, well, if you're an opera fan, go to opera, because that's not working right now. Only opera fans go to operas. You need more people to go to them. So, yeah, I thought it was an interesting article. I don't know that the suggestions are all that helpful, but very interesting about the finances and how like deeply in trouble a lot of opera is in the United States and in Europe.
Yeah. People can blame whatever they want, but if they're not trying their best to get the result, then like, why even complain? You know, you gotta put the effort in. All right. This last one is from me, and it says, "What are some things to take note of if you allow someone else who wants to orchestrate an original composition of your own, not orchestra?" I think that's sufficient. Oh, are you muted on my end? No. Oh, I think you're muted on your end.
Oh, sorry. Let me. I just want to read that myself because something about the way it was phrased sounded kind of strange to me. What are some things to take note of if you allow someone else to orchestrate an original? Oh, okay. I'll be honest. I've never had someone take something that I wrote for not orchestra and then had them want to orchestrate it. So yeah, and so I want to read what this person says. So recently I had a request to orchestrate a solo piano piece of mine. I don't do orchestration myself. I'm crafting a response saying, as long as it's made clear that it's their orchestra arrangement of my original piano piece, then go ahead. What would it be otherwise? I'm not sure. However, before I do so, I just want to ask if there's anything else to take note of. This is my first time doing this. Any advice? I mean, it sounds interesting. If you are not going to orchestrate it and somebody wants to do it, yeah, I mean, you know, you're living, so you could always, I guess, if somebody does something, this person does something, makes a choice which you wouldn't like, I guess you could say that, but I don't know. I mean, I think that's a cool position to be in. Yeah, I guess you might worry that like they do something, you know, they come up with a version of your piece and your piece was successful, for, you know, in its solo piano form, but then when it gets performed, the critics hate it and it's never performed again. But this is a piece of classical music, so this is unlikely to be a significant issue anyway. I hate to say that, but you're not Beethoven, so Yeah, I don't know. There's only one response, and the person says, "What does the person say?" You do need to have an idea of what you're going for. Otherwise, it's just like employing a painter to paint your house and telling them to just do what he thinks is best. I mean, I suppose, but that seems like more. It would apply more if you approach somebody and say, "Hey, can you orchestrate my piece?" Then I think you have more of a right to say, "This is the sorts of things I want," because I don't think this is the person painting your house and allowing them to just paint whatever they want is quite the right analogy, because in that case, presumably you have some kind of vision of what you want for the paint of your house. This would almost be like you have a house, somebody comes by and says, "Hey, I like your house, but I'm a painter. I think I could do something really cool." And you're like, "Okay, do it." I mean, yeah, you do again still have, like, maybe it's not a perfect analogy because you probably would still not want them to do something horrendous. But you have maybe a little bit less say because the person like enjoys what you did, and like, and you know, unless you feel like they're doing something again that's going to harm your reputation, which I think would be kind of hard to do. You could certainly give them like your thoughts, but I don't know that I would necessarily want to bind them to that. So I don't know. I just think it sounds like a cool opportunity. See what comes out of it, but not necessarily. I wouldn't worry too much unless, you know, okay, maybe if the Berlin Philharmonic is lined up, already lined up a performance of this orchestration. Okay, then maybe you can worry a little bit more. But otherwise, I don't know. I think it's just kind of cool, and you could get to be an opportunity to get to know another composer and see what they think and how they work and what they like about your music and what how they might, you know, approach your music from their perspective. I think it'd just be really cool to get that. Yeah, I you know, again, unless there's like a lot of money involved, I don't think there's really much I would worry about.
Cool. Yeah, that makes sense. Awesome. Well, I think that's it for tonight.
Yeah.
Take us out.
Sure. Well, thank you for listening to our podcast tonight. Especially, for listening to us kind of talking about the future, potential future direction of what we're going to do. So if you have thoughts, especially for our supporters on locals, do let us know, about what we said about, potential changes coming to our podcast. Special shout out to those supporters on locals, K Kairos, Alex Egbert, 99 Crime, and Post. You can join them, support us on locals. Link to our locals page as well as everywhere we stream, and to our Discord where we are talking about art all week, and hopefully with our plan going forward will be a place with a little bit more community engagement. You can find a link to all those things, our Discord, our locals page, everywhere we're streaming down there, mixedmediapodcast.com. So definitely check out everything under all the links there. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. All right. See you next week.
Yep. Thanks. Have a good night.
Thanks for watching.
Look, tell a man no trouble. I don't want beef, man. I just want vibes. Big man like me, no need for the telephone hype. I got too much getting online. One rule, then dead I'm on site. Wrong move, I bet they gon' ride. No need for the telephone hype, nah. No need for the snoozing. Big whip outside, I'm cruising. Big stick inside, no losing. Better watch out for the snake and Judas is. Don't ask them who this is. I bet they know what I'm moving in. I bet I show it into a dim. How you hate and then lose again? How you hating my vibes? Why you wasting my time? Getting hype on my line. Tell a man I don't want feedback. I just want relax. Brand new whip, two-tone. I need that brand new hit. You know, like lean back, brand new bits I live in. We back, man. You never gonna like us. Get them on sight now. Let them on like that way. They know I'm all righteous. Look at my life. I'm living all right. I'm nice. You know I'm all right. Cause looking like Christ. No need for the hype or fight or telephone vipers. No need for the telephone vibe.